I think we are working. Good. Both of us can be heard. Lovely. Excellent. Okay, friends. Everything sounds good. Everything looks good. Everybody's doing the damn thing.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Oh my God, not a tiny little fly being in my space. Get out! Hey! How did you get in here?
Is my voice really softer? That's the first time anyone has ever said that.
Really?
Yeah.
I just feel maybe, well, okay, number one, hearing impaired. Number two, I think I'm just used to loud people. I like people shouting.
Could be. Especially with like your field of work, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You're used to loud noises, yeah.
Yeah, used to loud freaking everything. Lovely. Okay, lots of people. I'm so excited. Lots of people are so excited to learn newly diagnoses in chat, so that's really nice. We have yeed our last haw of tech issues. Golly.
Yeah.
That is how that goes, huh? Wonderful. Okay, so for those of you that are new here, which is probably most of Aya's community, this is my mental health segment called the Sunday Reset. So we do this mostly every Sunday. And the point of the Sunday Reset is for us to have the opportunities to talk about mental health issues that are not often discussed, for things like shame, ridicule. You know, mental health has a really big stigma on it, and it makes people afraid to talk about mental health. And so with each discussion that we have, I intend to erase more and more of the stigma until it becomes much more commonplace for people to have mental health discussions. And sometimes we do what we're doing today. We have a guest where we have somebody that is pre-selected and is usually pre-selected because of the topic that we wish to discuss. You know, they're either an expert in the field, studying the field, has great experience in the field that I feel could talk very educationally and heavily about said topic. So this is why we have Aya, because Aya is going to school for psychology. When we'll talk, you know, much more about that. Let her get more in depth about that. And today's topic that we're talking about is ADHD. So in today's discussion, we're going to cover things like ADHD as a whole. You know, like what is ADHD? What are some symptoms to look out for? But we are also going to talk about things like misconceptions, misunderstandings when it comes to ADHD. We're going to talk about our own personal experiences with ADHD. We'll talk about things like late diagnoses, why it's so difficult to diagnose ADHD, and why people go so long in life not getting proper diagnoses, sometimes in children, why they struggle to get diagnoses for ADHD, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be questions that I have written predetermined beforehand that Aya has not seen. We do this for a multitude of reasons, but the number one reason is I want to get the most authentic, genuine answers without anything being like pre-rehearsed or pre-recorded, so that everybody knows it is raw and as real as possible. So with that said, sweet Aya, will you please tell everybody about yourself and what got you into streaming?
Oof, okay, so hi. Like as you said, my name is Aya. I'm a variety streamer, and I actually started randomly in July of 2024. I was never really a gamer growing up. All I had was a little pink DS Lite. And so the older I got, the more people I met, the more friends I made, the more I started seeing people game, and I was very, interested in the whole gaming world. And it started with me gaming with one of my friends on their Discord server and them, sharing their screen. And I really enjoyed watching them play. So they're like, oh, a lot of people stream their gaming sessions on Twitch. You should give it a shot. I was like, me? Hell no. Can you me with I have social anxiety, by the way. I've been told it doesn't show when I'm streaming, but I have very severe social anxiety. And so I was like, there is no way that me, with my social anxiety, I'm going to put myself out there voluntarily on the internet and just game. And I just, picked up my Switch, grabbed Animal Crossing New Horizons. I was like, okay, well, I'll try. And the rest is history. It started with 2 people in my chat, and now we are officially at 280 followers, you guys. That is crazy.
Yay!
It's been 9 months of me streaming. So that's like my whole streaming journey. As to who I am and what I do, I'm actually graduating with my bachelor's in neuroscience in 4 days, which is crazy. And I am starting a psychology degree this September. It's for 2 years to get my prerequisites, and then the goal afterwards is a 4 years long PhD to become a clinical neuropsychologist. So the brain is my domain. It is something I'm very, very interested in. But also, I got diagnosed with ADHD almost 2 years ago. So this topic is very, very personal to me as well.
I love that saying, the brain is my domain. You should put that on merchandise, to be perfectly honest with you.
I like that.
Yeah, that is, as soon as you said it, I was like, ooh, that is clever. I like that. Will she be able to answer questions from the chat? Yes. So as it were, I do, like I said, I do have pre-written questions. However, feel free at any point to discuss amongst yourselves, or if you would like to ask questions to Aya, myself, or both of us, also feel free to do so. We will be taking like opportunities to stop and address chat as often as we can. So yeah, definitely don't feel free to talk, and don't be afraid to feel free to talk. That's what I meant to say. Don't be afraid to talk freely, share whatever feels comfortable. I mean, that goes for Aya too. We had spoken beforehand, but, that goes for everybody in chat as well. If you feel comfortable sharing your experiences, or sharing just like any stories or anything that you'd like that comes up, feel free. This is an open space, no judgment. We are making it as safe as possible for you guys to feel comfortable. Aya is a smart cookie. Like, what the hell? Not the PhD. Holy shit. That's amazing. It's a lot of work. It is. That's why I said beforehand, I was like, no, you need your flowers, girl, because that's a lot of work. Aw, perfect. Ironically, so many streamers have social anxiety that just seems to turn off when they go live. Yeah. Right. That is, I was going to say, before you said you had social anxiety, I would not have guessed that. So I'm in the same boat as everyone else that probably tells you the same thing. That's cool. No, I'm happy that streaming ended up being something that you can do that does not give you social anxiety like it does, kind of like in real life. I imagine things like talking in front of like big crowds and presenting just kind of is really difficult for you. Yeah. So in a sense, in a lot of ways, this is also like presenting and talking in front of like crowds. But I feel like when you do it behind a camera, rather than like physically seeing like all the people that look at you, I feel like it makes it a little bit more easier to do. And it makes you feel like, I don't know, I guess like a little less perceived in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like the best way I can explain that.
No, it makes sense. Absolutely.
Perfect.
But I noticed it, like, streaming helped me be more comfortable presenting in person, which is good. Because last semester I had like 5 presentations to do, and every single time the feedback I got was, "You're a natural." And I'm like, yeah, well, who would have guessed?
Right, exactly. No, I do love that. That's why when people kind of, scoff at things like streaming, I take it personally, because I'm like, streaming is not just video games. Like, it's not just, me playing a game, silly little gamer on my silly little platform. Like, it's, for a lot of people, it's so much more than that. It's just like you said, it's helping you tackle social anxiety in real life, off the screen. Like, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of things you could do that could help that. But if something as comfortable as sitting in front of your computer and just like talking to your community and whatnot helps you to better present in your profession, in your day-to-day life, like, I think that speaks leagues towards how important things like streaming and gaming can be. Absolutely. When they're used correctly. The best things in life tend to come out of nowhere. Yeah, that's true. That is so Absolutely. True. Too gorgeous. Is it my birthday? I don't know. Is it? Oh, you flatter. What the hell? Perfect. Okay, so while we're on the topic of streaming really quick, do you have a favorite or multiple favorite things about streaming? And then do you have like things that you don't really like about streaming? Can you talk a little bit about both of those?
Sure. So when it comes to my favorite things about streaming, honestly, it's the people I've met through streaming because obviously you can't become friends with everybody on the internet. But I have met some really really cool people through my streaming. A lot of them have actually become, actual friends of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the whole sense of community, if that makes sense.
It
Because I know a lot
does.
of people on the internet, even streamers included, and influencers and whatnot, they look at their followers and their community as just numbers, and I'll
Mm.
never understand that. Like, imagine hanging out with just 12 people in real life. That would be crazy. Imagine 12 people going out of their way and, voluntarily hanging out with me. So why is having just 12 viewers on Twitch, not a big deal? It
Mhm.
is a big deal. It's crazy. So, I've been meeting a lot of people. I've been getting into a lot of games I never thought I'd get into. And it has helped me learn more about myself in a sort of way. Aside from, the whole, it's a hobby I enjoy doing. I like gaming, and it's just a good way to de-stress after the whole studying and work type thing. As to what I don't like, well, one, it's a lot of people have a hustle culture when it comes to your followers and your viewer count, which I will never understand. I
Mhm.
mean, yes, of course, everybody wants, their channel to grow, eventually become, I don't know, partners, get sponsorships. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing this, for the fun of it, because it's just something you genuinely enjoy, then what are you doing it for? So, the pressure, not directly, but the pressure from a lot of people like, yeah, but you need to grow your channel, you need to do this, you need to do that. I don't like it because I'm just here to, have fun and hang out, not, work more because I'm already working enough in my day-to-day life. And the little, things that happen here and there. I've had a hate raid
Ah,
twice. I don't
no.
understand. One of them was actually during my very first episode of my little mental health series where I was actually talking about ADHD.
That's so fucked. I hate that. Ew.
Why are you doing that? What's the point?
Yeah. I
Like
don't
just because
understand the haters.
behind a screen?
Yeah. No, oh my God, I'm so disappointed to hear that. It sucks. Hate raids are such a nasty thing for anybody to do. I'm knocking on wood right now. I have yet to experience a hate raid, but I have experienced intense episodes of like follow botting. Haters come in and out of chat all the time. I just had two come in to chat yesterday, and I had to kick somebody out of my community recently because they were just being like nasty. Like, it's
Oh,
it's so difficult to conceptualize where you have to be in your brain to be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go bully this person
mm.
online simply because they're online and simply because they're there and I'm bored and I just feel like bullying. Like, dude, go outside, get a hobby, perhaps. Like, and I
Yeah.
understand the hustle thing too. Like, I didn't know that you've only been streaming for 9 months. I thought it was longer. That's actually so wonderful to hear. But I lost my train of thought. Damn it. No. Just kidding. It's back. I think that especially when you first get started streaming, yeah, there is such an intense like hustle culture that everybody on Twitch seems to fall into, where it's like you gotta promote here, you gotta like beg people to come watch you, you have to post here, you have to post there, you have to grow, you have to grow, you have to grow. And I'm like, damn, I remember when I first started, I didn't even think about growing. All I kept thinking about was like, okay, how do I make these two people that are currently sitting in chat think I'm cool? Like, how do I get them to like me? I'm cool. I'm here. I'm playing a game. I'm just a little nerd. And there's two people in my chat. That's so cool. Like, let's just hang out. Let's chat. Let's geek out about things. Obviously, you're a geek too because you're here in my chat watching me play a game. And if I'm a nerd, you're a nerd. You know what I mean? So like the fact that you were like, yeah, people shit on you know, low view counts and whatnot, which is why I tell people like just turn your view counts off. It's so harmful, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense where it's like, okay, so because I don't have 1,000 viewers in my chat at any given time, does that mean that what I'm doing and what I'm saying is any less valid than the big streamers that do have thousands of like viewers in their chat? Like they're doing the same thing I'm doing. We're both playing games. It just so happens, they grinded, they
Yeah.
built their community, they did what they had to do, to get the following they have, and I have my following. And like as long as we're both comfortable in our communities and we're comfortable with what we're doing, who gives a fuck about a view count?
Exactly.
It's very disappointing, but I do heavily agree on the dislike of the grind culture. It's so unhealthy too, and I saw somebody mention burnout in chat. Ficos did, yeah, and then the burnout happens. Too often I've heard people drop streaming because they're expecting that in like the first few months they're going to gain hundreds and hundreds of followers if they do XYZ, and you know, all of a sudden they're going to go from having one person in chat to like 50 people in chat in like 2 months. And not for nothing, sometimes that does happen to people, but sometimes it doesn't. And even if it doesn't, like, that's not the point. That's not, you should never make growing on Twitch and like getting, I don't know, billions of followers and viewers, that should never be your why for streaming. That should never be the point. Like, your why should be things like, I want to have fun, I want to connect with people, I want to try new games that I maybe am kind of nervous to try on my own, but with the community there, it kind of gives me the strength to do it, type of thing. Like, you should have fun at the end of the day. It shouldn't be about like growing and just being obsessed with numbers. It's so unhealthy. I'm just scrolling chat real quick just to see if there's anything to address. I do like what Lady Lycan said here. My husband and I stream too. Gaming's one of his coping mechanisms. I just don't get how the zoning out work. It makes me feel ignored, and I know he doesn't mean to because he even says he doesn't mean to. The gaming as a coping mechanism is definitely, yeah, I do feel that too. For ADHD, I do feel that that's a very common thing to do, that it is often a hyperfixation as well. That also comes with ADHD, is like the hyperfixation. So sometimes when you find a new game that you like and you hyperfixate so heavily, you can very often forget reality exists like around you, like the people, your environment, even things in your body, like your hunger cues, your thirst cues, your exhaustion cues. Like, sometimes you hyperfixate so hard depending on the severity of the ADHD that you just forget. And like, it's not intentional, it's not personal, like you're not doing it on purpose, it just happens. But we are gonna get definitely way more into that, like, you know, like the nuts and bolts and stuff of that. But I did just want to, you know, let Lady Lycan feel acknowledged in that sense, that like, yeah, I do agree, it is a big coping mechanism for sure. For sure. Let's see. The fun part about the fun part about having a shared chat is that I do like how they do this feature where, like, on my end, your messages are grayed out and mine are not grayed out, so I can tell like who is talking on your end, who's talking on my end, type of thing. But that's lovely. I mean, I'm not skipping anything because I do want to see everybody. Oh, your mom's here.
Yes.
Oh my god, cute. Hi, Mama Chaos. We love you.
When I told her I was going live with you, she's like, I want to watch.
I know, I texted Mama Sensei too, but she is unfortunately sleeping. She woke up really early this morning, and then she was like, you know what? No, it's Sunday. I'm going back to sleep. I said, period, queen. Period. Go get your rest.
Yeah.
So she's sleeping.
But I'm trying to like type answers while you're talking, so I acknowledge people in the meantime, so I don't like, interrupt you while you're talking.
No, that's, I do the exact same thing. When the guests are talking, I like very quietly type because my keyboard's quite loud, so I try really hard to be like, I'm trying to be quiet so you can't hear it because my mic's kind of sensitive. All right, so I'm gonna scroll through while I ask you the next question. So now kind of getting into just kind of like mental health in general. So I ask everybody these initial 3 questions, but this question's my favorite one to ask because everybody answers it differently. So if somebody were to ask you, hey, Aya, define mental health to me, what do you think you would say?
The thing that comes to mind is mental health is healthcare.
Oh, I love that. Shit. Me and Kisa were just talking about that. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice. Would you like to elaborate?
Yes, and that might be because, you know, the brain is my domain, but a lot of people seem to not, you know, like when you tell someone you're mentally ill, the first thing is, okay, but it's all in your head. But the brain is an organ, and just like any other organ, the brain can get sick. So why do you shame someone who has a heart disease why would you not shame someone who has a heart disease, but you would shame someone who has a mental illness, when both the heart and the brain are organs, and an organ, can and will fall ill. And so the whole stigma around mental health, and the fact that there's not enough funding for mental health, there's not enough access to mental health services, there are not even enough mental health professionals. Versus you have, I don't know how many general practitioners, how many cardiologists, how many neurologists. It doesn't make sense. And I believe like a big part of it is because of the stigma around mental health.
I 100% agree. Literally everything you said was exactly what I said 2 nights ago. Kiso and Stillet were talking about mental health. They were playing Split Fiction, and they were talking about mental health, and we got to talking about the stigma, about why is it so easy when people get things like colds or the flu, or you break a bone and you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital. It's like second nature. Nobody questions it when you go to the doctor for a cold, to get some medicine, or, to get like antibiotics. Nobody questions that. People are like, yeah, sure, that's normal. People encourage you when you're sick with a thing like a cold. They encourage you to go to the doctor. They encourage you to take medication because it's normal for them. But then when you tell people, I have bipolar disorder, or I have ADHD, or I have depression or anxiety, people are so quick to then turn it on a dime and make every single excuse in the book to get you to believe you do not have these mental illnesses, to convince you that what is going on in your head is not real. They do not encourage you to seek treatment. They do not encourage you to get on medication. They do not encourage you to go to a doctor like they do with a cold. But it is the exact same thing. Mental health is healthcare. If mental health is happening in the brain, and the brain is in the body, and the body is part of healthcare, why is it not treated the same? I 100% agree. That's why, like, when you said it, I was like, yes! Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, dude. I 100%
that literally
agree.
anything and everything that happens in the brain affects the entire body. Like, why would you not want to take care of the brain if anything that goes on up here is going to affect your heart, your blood pressure, your digestive tract, even literally everything? Like, why do you shame people for wanting to take care of their brain when their brain is, I don't know. I like to think of the brain, and it makes sense. In those movies where you have like big robots and stuff, and people sit and they have like the levers and stuff, and they control the big
Yes.
robot. Basically, the brain.
Yep. No, it's
So if you want the
100%
robot
true.
to walk and work, you need to take care of the brain.
And it makes so much sense when you say it out loud. Like when it's just like two educated individuals saying it out loud to each other. We're both like, yeah, it makes total sense. But I think where it does not make sense to other people is strictly because of an extreme lack of education and lack of acknowledgement across the board. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school, we did not have mental health discussions. We did not have mental health centered classes. We didn't even have mental health centered segments of classes. I don't remember even touching a book that was even centered around psychology or the brain until I got to college. And in college, the reason you take classes like that is because you then have a choice to choose those classes. So you reach out and you pick those classes. But when you're in high school, especially in high school, when a lot of that, the brain kind of goes topsy-turvy in puberty and stuff like that, and high school is so formative for so much of your psychological and mental experiences, they are not readily offered. They are not made part of a normal curriculum. Mental health is not even touched upon in most classes. And so when there are so many things running rampant in a teenager's mind mentally, nobody is talking about it. Nobody is discussing it. And that creates things like isolation. And it creates things like, self-consciousness, making you think, well, am I the only one that is going through this? Am I the only one that feels like this? I must be such a freak. I'm such an outcast. Like, I'm such a weirdo. Nobody understands me. And then it just snowballs. It just becomes this big like abominable thing that could just be easier to understand if we just started incorporating that education early. I mean, I'm even vying to start putting it into education as early as elementary school. I just think once you start reaching that age where you can conceptualize ideas outside of your head that are abstract, I think that is when we should be putting those types of discussions out there, because now they're able to understand and think outside of themselves, which is what mental health, that's where mental health begins. You need to start thinking of these abstract understandings, because mental health is not that easy to understand. So you have to be the right age to be like, okay, cool, we can conceptualize this now. Let's move forward and talk about that. So it's very disappointing, but that's why we do what we do. That's why we talk about these things. We need more people in healthcare and mental health care.
Yeah, I want to address something. Is it Ficos? Am I pronouncing that right?
Mm-hmm.
If not, let me know. But Ficos said, I lived in Puerto Rico and I never heard anyone talk about mental health. It also sadly depends where you are from, how bad the stigma is too. And absolutely, I mentioned it earlier in chat, but I was born and raised in Lebanon. And unfortunately, to this day in the Middle East, there is a big stigma around mental health. Mm-hmm. And so Ayamakeschaos even said earlier that taboo is a killer. And I 100% agree. I'm grateful that mom has always been, open when it comes to mental health, but in a community that is not big on mental health, you can't really talk about it because they're like, oh, but what are people going to say? And so they don't talk about it in school. They don't teach you about it. And it really wasn't until I moved here. So I'm currently in Canada. It wasn't until I moved here 4 years ago that I was actually able to go and get the information and, learn about mental health and go to therapy and all that. So I absolutely agree. It unfortunately depends on where you're from and what community you're in, what society you live in. And I hate it because, again, like we were saying, mental health is healthcare, and it's one of the basics that you should have and you should be taught about, especially in children, like you were saying, Kissy, because they're at that age where emotional intelligence is very important and they need to start building that from, a young age. And that doesn't happen, which is why you have teenagers that have temper tantrums and don't understand themselves, and it just snowballs into a whole bunch of issues when you could teach them about their emotions and that it's okay to have big feelings and that you're just not supposed to understand everything and have everything figured out from the start.
That's the important part. Yes, that's the important part that I stress very heavily, especially to a lot of my clients, like in my field, that medicine, even broader, healthcare. Healthcare is so broad, it's so expansive. It can be incredibly intimidating to attempt to tackle because there is just so much to learn and understand. However, I do tell them knowledge is not the only part of a solution. Just because you know something does not fix something. It does not fully fix what is going on. So say for example, you're a parent and you have a child that you suspect has ADHD, and you can recognize the struggles. You can see, how they are trying to grasp day-to-day life while also grasping growing up and just being a child. Not for nothing, being a child is kind of hard. You don't have the proper tools to communicate because you just haven't learned how to fully talk or conceptualize those ideas yet. But you have all these big feelings and you have all these big thoughts, and you just don't know how to properly convey them. So this is why you heavily lean on your parents, because your parents are, I don't want to say mouthpiece because that sounds so derogatory, but they speak for you because you do not really know how to speak for yourself just yet. Right. So if you're a parent who has a child that you are suspecting has ADHD, and you bring them to a doctor and the doctor confirms it and gives them a diagnosis yes, your child has ADHD. Knowing is half the battle. It's great that you now know that your child has ADHD. However, knowing does not fix anything, and it certainly doesn't fix anything overnight. It makes it easier for you to then understand where you have to go next, which is where I also think a lot of the disconnect happens, is sometimes we're not given the proper resources, or we don't have the proper resources or availability to said resources in order to help. So when your child gets diagnosed with ADHD, What are you supposed to do after that? Depending on the severity, what types of resources are you supposed to reach out to? What types of things should you implement in your child's day-to-day routine to then make living with ADHD easier? Then you have to tackle medication. Do I want to put my child on ADHD medication? What kind of ADHD medication? And it really depends on what kind of doctor you get. Some doctors are not super great at being forthcoming at like, some doctors are, and this is going to sound so weird, but some doctors are anti-medication. Some doctors are like, I don't want to put your kid on medication. And if you're not an educated, I'm sorry, what I will say instead is, if you are not a medically educated person, it can be very difficult for you to discern whether or not your doctor is giving you the proper education and the proper information. So some parents are just like, you know what, sure, I won't put my kid on meds because my doctor told me not to. But then nothing changes with your kid. Everything stays the same. Even though you have the diagnosis of ADHD, nothing changes. So this is why it's so important to educate yourself as best as you can because, and this is coming from a medical professional, we don't know everything. We don't know everything. We can't know everything. We're not there 24/7. We do not know your kid. We do not know you the way you know you. So advocation, education, speaking up, speaking out is incredibly so important when it comes to stuff like this. So funny enough, I think it's like 6 questions. Is it 6? It's actually 8. Well, whatever. These don't have to be segmented or sequential. Yeah, these don't have to be sequential. These can just like bounce around whenever. But we did start to talk about this, and so this is a perfect segue into this question. So what is your take on the whole debate between nature versus nurture when it comes to mental health? And then if you'd like to even take it a step further, nature versus nurture when it comes to ADHD, do you take stock in either side? Do you feel strongly about either side, or do you have arguments for both? Just kind of give me your like generalized ideas of how you feel about that.
That is a tough one.
That's okay. Take your time. I have a lot of catching up in chat to do, it seems.
Yeah, there are actually, people have said very, very
No, I love this because it's like, not only do I get to have you as a guest, but I had to have everybody else as guests too because they all get to talk too.
And I'm happy actually Mom is chatting because Mom, she has a bachelor's and a master's in early childhood education. So she's talking about the importance of educating early childhood educators about ADHD and things of the sort.
I would love to have Ayamakeschaos on at some point. Could you imagine? That would be so fun. I've been dying to get my own mom on the Sunday Reset, but she's very camera shy. So I'm trying so hard to be like, Mom, please, just like, you have so much knowledge, like so much to talk about. Please just come on once.
Mom, you heard Kissy. It wasn't me. I was able to get her on here for an episode to tell us about her fibromyalgia. So I might be able to convince her about a Sunday Reset.
Listen, me to Ayamakeschaos. This is my official invitation to come on to the Sunday Reset. You can come on with your daughter if you don't want to come on by yourself. That's totally fine. We can have a double feature of Aya and then with her mom as well. I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed whatsoever. But you take your time, Queen. You think about it. You let me know.
Okay, so when it comes to the whole nature versus nurture, when it comes to ADHD, I think it's a bit of both. And that goes back to, well, actually the epidemiology of ADHD and what causes it.
You can go into that too if you'd like. You can go into that too if you would like, the epidemiology of ADHD. Yeah, I'm sure everybody in chat would love to know that too, just in case they don't know.
I have a lot of stuff that I wrote down because everything I know is in French, and I was like, I'm gonna write them down in English so I don't stutter.
That's okay.
But so basically, there are a lot of root causes that are believed to be, the causes of ADHD, but to this day, most of them are still under debate, just because they have not been able to pinpoint a specific cause. But the whole nature versus nurture thing, if we're going to talk about the nature side first, there are environmental factors, genetic factors, and neurophysiological factors when it comes to what causes ADHD. I will not really go into like a lot of detail just because a lot of it is medical and that is not my domain, so I will rather go into more like the brain structures and such. But when it comes to environmental factors, it is believed that during pregnancy, things like alcoholism, smoking, exposure to heavy metals, even gestational diabetes can all increase the risk of having ADHD. So it's not a cause to effect type of situation, but it could increase the risk of the child having ADHD. If we're talking nature when it comes to environmental factors. And what's interesting about the nurture part is the psychosocial environment in which the child is raised can modulate the evolution and the expression of ADHD. So the way a child is raised cannot cause ADHD, but if a child already has ADHD, the way the child is raised can influence how severe the ADHD symptoms are. And that's where the whole nurture part comes into play. I almost made my whole setup fall.
Oh no, careful.
We're good. I just bumped him my desk. But I think that's like heavy on the what we were saying earlier. Like a diagnosis is not gonna make the ADHD go away. Not diagnosing it is not gonna make it go away. And it's rather, how you handle it and how you deal with the ADHD. Not only that, but there are genetic factors. And interestingly enough, in up to 80% of cases, ADHD it relies on a heritability component. And so, for example, when a parent has ADHD, their child has a 50% chance of also having ADHD. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, I even have my sources. If you want me to send you the document after stream,
I would love to. Oh my gosh.
I even have the DSM-5 open on here, just in case anybody had more questions. I'm like, I am ready.
No, I'm ready.
But
I'm ready too.
But, more and more research has been showing that slowly, we can say that ADHD is almost as hereditary as someone's height. Which is why I find it interesting when, let's say, a person gets diagnosed late in life with ADHD, their parents start questioning themselves like, maybe I have ADHD because, your symptoms make sense to me. This sounds familiar and this sounds familiar. And this has actually been happening to Ayamakeschaos a lot, where she was like, hey, I do this too. I do that too. Does this mean I also have ADHD? I'm like, well, maybe, because there is a heavy hereditary component. But what I find to be the most interesting, and that will bring us back to the medication part, some genes have been identified as being the root cause of ADHD, notably the genes for the dopamine receptor. And for those of you who know, for those of you who don't know, our body basically runs on molecules between our neurons, which is like our little cells that have electricity and connect everything to everything. And dopamine is one of those molecules. They're called neurotransmitters, neuro for the nerve, and transmitters because they transmit the information. And dopamine is very, very important. It is literally in all of our brain structures. So when it comes to motivation, reward, pleasure, attention span, literally everything, dopamine is there. And that is actually why in ADHD, a lot of those functions are not working properly, because, it is believed that the receptor that basically, takes the little dopamine and makes things happen is not working properly. Not only that, but genes coding for the transporter of dopamine, which basically takes our little dopamine molecule from one neuron to another, is also not working properly. And so one of the most important molecules in our entire system is not working properly. And that is why ADHD is very multifaceted. If I'm getting too technical, please let me know. I try my best to make the sciencey thing easy to understand.
No, I love it. Well, of course I love it. It's I'm medically trained, so this is wonderful for me. But you're doing a very good job in breaking it down into what we call like a 5th grade understanding, which is how we're like trained to talk about medicine to like our clients and whatnot. So yeah, if it like, and for Chad, if at any point anybody's just like, feel free.
Yes,
yeah. Feel free to be like, can you either repeat that or like slightly dumb it down a little bit more, please? Because I am struggling.
And
but continue.
For the last part of the whole nature part, research has shown that there are changes and abnormalities in brain structures themselves. So it's not just the little molecules that go from neuron to neuron, but it's brain structures as is. And there are a lot, because it's literally everywhere. but I picked like 3 out of all of them because they're the most important. The first one being the frontal lobe. And every time I talk about the frontal lobe, I'm like, frontal lobe, because it's literally in the front. And
Yep.
basically, what it does is it takes care of thinking, planning, organizing, problem solving, short term memory, movement, and social skills. So, our frontal lobe is basically our control center,
Mm-hmm.
and it is abnormal in individuals with ADHD when it comes to its structure, which is why we don't plan properly. Short-term memory is terrible. Let's be honest. Social skills are not always the way they should be. And what I learned recently, actually, about ADHD is that when we are problem solving, so the way people or neurotypical people problem solve is, let's say you give them a puzzle or I don't know, something to do. As they're looking at the thing, they can see steps in their head, so they can already plan it out in their head.
Yep.
Whereas in individuals with ADHD, it's a trial and error type of thing. You have to actually try to do the thing, fail, try another way, fail, try a third way, fail. And it's one of the tests that are used for diagnosis. And I remember doing it for my diagnosis, and it was annoying. Because basically I was shown like a picture and I had little cubes with triangles on them, and I had to put the cubes in a way where the triangles would be like side to side and create that same picture. And the neuropsychologist doing the evaluation was looking at me and seeing in how many steps I was doing the thing. And usually people do it in, let's say, 5. I did it in 15. And that's because when it comes to our problem solving skills, we do not have this problem solving space in our head, and we cannot visualize it as we're just looking at the problem. We need to do it through trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because of the abnormalities in the structure of our frontal lobe. But another structure that I find interesting is, well, it's a bunch of structures and like they're grouped together. They're called the basal ganglia. And little side note, when it comes to the basal ganglia, it's actually where things go wrong, and that's what leads to Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
But the basal ganglia are associated with a lot of functions like motor movements, i.e. later on Parkinson's, habit forming, which is why it is very hard for us to form a habit. You know how they say it takes 21 days to form a habit? Bullshit.
Nope, not for them.
I can form like 3 days, and then it takes me 6 months to get back into it because I skipped it once.
Yep.
Cognition and emotions. And we will talk a bit more about emotions and emotional hyperreactivity in ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
But the basal ganglia, the little bunch of them, are very heavily dependent on dopamine, which is why, again, we go back to the, dopamine receptors and dopamine transporters not working properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have the little molecules that makes this whole thing work. And then the last one I want to talk about is the anterior cingulate cortex, which is also very, very important when it comes to decision making, but also, there we go, impulse control and reward anticipation, which is why, and I think, Kyle, you and I talked about this yesterday maybe, or the day before that, but that's why a lot of individuals with ADHD don't really think not ahead, but we don't do things for like a long term or like a reward that's going to be like in 2 or 3 months. We like quick hit rewards, which is why setting long-term goals is hard for a lot of us, because the reward gratification is going to be, it's going to come in way later. I'm like, no, that's not good enough. We need this now. We need the hit of dopamine now.
Yep.
And that is because the abnormalities in the structure of the anterior cingulate cortex. And there's the cerebellum, which is our little thing here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go into details because it's very complicated, and honestly, I hated studying the cerebellum. But it has a lot to do with like
monster.
It was. I remember my neuroanatomy classes, not fun.
Mm-mm.
But it has a lot to do with your executive function as well as your motor movements. So all that to say is ADHD is not just the little quirky things we do. It's not just us zoning out, or we can't focus, or we forget our keys all the time. It's literally our brain structures not being shaped the way they're supposed to, and our little molecules in our brain not working the way they're supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
So it is much deeper than just what you see and us being scatterbrained. It is our literal brain being built different. And so to go back to your question, when it comes to nature versus nurture, a lot of it is nature, but the nurture aspect comes into, finding coping mechanisms and figuring out how to live with your ADHD instead of against it.
And this is the most thorough, and this is probably very like because I'm type A Virgo. I love thorough, in-depth. Yeah, that's right, exactly. I love thorough, in-depth explanations. I especially love thorough, in-depth medical and just like health-related discussions and explanations, because I do not have a lot of friends who are in healthcare, so it's very difficult for me to talk about certain things to the depth I would like to, because I have to. I hate using the word dumb it down. It sounds so mean, but I have to essentially like dumb it down a lot for them because they obviously do not understand the depth. But thank you very much for that. That was chef's kiss. That was so good. But as somebody, anybody in chat who is not medically trained or is not like mental health trained or whatnot, if anybody, some regular Joe off the street just heard everything that you said, the generalized understanding that I would take away from that is, wow, that sounds like a lot for a brain to go through. And I just think that generalized understanding of people just being like, wow, that's a lot for a brain to go through, rather than just being like, that all sounds very dramatic. Why not just stop? That's why the whole mental health debate where people just say like, how about you just like, have you ever thought about just like not, or just like stopping? It's like, wow, revolutionary. All of my years of medical training out the window because I never once thought about just stopping. Incredible. You've been so helpful. But it is not so easy to just, as a thought process, just be like, okay, stop. It just does not work like that, especially when there are so many parts of the brain that are literally malfunctioning. Like, how can you tell a piece that's not working to just suddenly work all of a sudden? It does not make sense. I will never forget, not ADHD, but like anxiety related. When I got my diagnosis for anxiety, this was like years ago, and I finally, broke down and started talking to my parents about it. My father is very like, I guess my father would be like considered blue collar, but my father is like, both my parents were not very good at mental health until only, a couple years ago. But even now they still kind of struggle with the understanding of like what mental health is, because they both just did not have that type of like upbringing or education. So my brother and I, we're the ones that are kind of like, hey parents, this is mental health. Y'all need to start paying attention. So when the whole anxiety thing happened, and I remember explaining it to my father, I was like, hey dad, this is what's going on in my brain. I have anxiety. And then when I had a panic attack for the first time in front of my father, and he just did his best, and when it was over, we were debriefing, and he's like, why does that happen? What triggered that for you? Like, what happened to you? Like, that was scary to watch you go through. And I was like, dad, sometimes the brain just be going, and I do not have any control over it. And he was like, well, maybe like, have you ever thought to just stop it? And I just remember sitting there and being like, oh, father, sweet father, like, let me hold your hands so gently when I tell you this. Fuck no, dad. I cannot just stop the rush of thoughts. Like, and ADHD is a lot like that too. It's very much like you cannot, for those of you that are unaware, because this sounds so like elementary to break down, but I do want people to understand. ADHD is an acronym. It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactive or Hyperactivity Disorder. Is it hyperactive? Right. Oh, right. Disorder. So if we take those words and we break them down, attention deficit, when you are at a deficit, it means you either don't have it or it is less than the normal amount. So, when people tell you like you're vitamin D deficient or you're vitamin C deficient, like if your doctor tells you, oh, you just go out and drink some more milk, you're kind of calcium deficient, whatever. If you do not have something, the thought would be, okay, so add to it in order to erase the deficit. Attention deficit does not work like that. I cannot just grab more attention and stuff it into my brain to then make sure I do not have a deficit of attention anymore. That is not how that works. When you are attention deficit, it literally means you are unable to focus. You are unable to pay attention. little things will catch your attention so fast you are unable to focus on things for more than a certain amount of time, which makes things like learning, schoolwork, projects, presentations, it makes things like that incredibly difficult. Even stuff like this, it could make things like streaming and discussions difficult because you cannot hold your attention or your focus for more than a couple of seconds at a time. And for some people it's longer, some people it's shorter. And then the hyperactive part, that is where it gets a little like topsy-turvy, because for some people the hyperactivity can be like borderline manic, where you're just kind of like, I have so much energy, I'm running around like a little Energizer bunny until my body literally gives out. For other people, the hyperactivity could literally be the racing thoughts, like the thoughts just keep going and going and going and going. And that's where it gets annoying when people are like, so just stop thinking. Really? Wow, no thoughts. I would love to be head empty, babes. I would love to be head empty, but I cannot. I literally have no idea how. The brain just does not work like that. So I think having the explanation that you gave, you know, even though it was like science heavy, I just think that if people started to understand that like it's not a choice. Like, I am not choosing to be this way. I am not waking up every day and being like, yeah, sure, let me just space out 15 times in the span of 60 seconds and not pay attention to a single thing. Let me have so much energy that I literally just go and forget to eat for 8 hours at a time, or drink anything for 8 hours at a time, or even like sit down for 8 hours at a time. Like, yeah, let me just do that. Let me just wake up and live my life like that every single day. Like, it's not a choice. And like, my brain is wired this way. Like, so you cannot, even if we're not talking about ADHD, just mental health in general, you cannot just stop. You can't just like sit down and tell your brain like, hey, knock, knock, cut it out. Like, I would love to.
You don't do that today.
How about be a brain? Like, be an actual functioning brain today. You know how people, how people talk about the, what is it called? When you sit in front of a mirror, is it self-actualization? No, what are they called? Something affirming thoughts. Like when you're sitting in front of a mirror. Yes, self-affirmation. Thank you. Holy crap. Yes, like your self-affirmation. Like, you know, you sit in front of a mirror and you're like, I am beautiful. I am confident. I am like wonderful, blah, blah, blah. I wish I could do that for mental health. Like,
I'm not mentally ill.
Nope. I don't have ADHD. I will not have anxious thoughts today. I will focus for more than like 65 seconds at a time. Like, I'll do it. It doesn't work like that. I wish it did, dude. I really do. I wish. Oh my God. It's exhausting. I think that's the part I need more people to understand is like, it's exhausting. This is not like ha ha hee hee fun and games. Like, this sucks. this sucks.
And the thing is, it sucks more because we're aware of it and we just cannot do anything about it. Like the whole procrastination or executive dysfunction or even task paralysis. Can we talk about task paralysis?
Oh, yes, please.
Especially when I have like 3 exams in the same day with like 6 chapters each and I just cannot bring myself to sit and study. And people are like, oh, well, you know, try Pomodoro. That's not how it works.
Nope.
I'm aware that I need to get work done. I just can't. And I'm not being lazy. The laziness.
That's the worst one.
I'm not being lazy on purpose. I'm aware of what's happening. I just cannot do it.
I think that the task paralysis and the executive dysfunctioning is also so incredibly important to talk about when it comes to ADHD, because that happens to me a lot, where there will be so much to do that the second I start thinking about doing said thing, my brain goes into task mode where I start to list, okay, in order to get said objective done, I have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, blah, blah. These are all the steps I need to complete said thing. I haven't even started to tackle said thing. But in my head, I'm already doing what I call, and I think what a lot of people call, is the mental load. I'm already doing the mental work. I'm already mentally going through in my head what steps I need to take in order to get that objective done. And sometimes those steps are so overwhelming, it makes me immediately not want to do the task. Or there's so many tasks that thinking about doing any of them immediately makes me be like, No, I can't do that. I have no mental capacity for that. I have no physical capacity for that. And so instead, I'm just going to lay in my bed and rot instead of getting my laundry done, instead of washing my dishes, instead of taking my dog out for a walk. Like, that's the task paralysis. Like, yes, there are things to do. Yes, I know there are things to do. And I know how to do the things that need to be done. It is not a matter of me choosing not to do them. It's a matter of me having thought so much about doing them that my brain short-circuited, and now I am unable to do them. I just lay in my bed and I'm like, that's not happening today. Sorry, can't do it. And it's really tough to explain to somebody who does not function that way, because to them it just looks like, well, you're just choosing not to do it. Just get up and go do it. I would love to. Do you think I would like my laundry to sit there for 2 weeks and not be folded? Just kind of sit in the same area and not be put away? No, I hate that. That makes me anxious. But at the same time, my brain has already decided, we're not doing that today. Do not have the space for it. Sorry.
And the fact that, I don't know, I think it's also very common in individuals with ADHD, but let's say I was already planning on doing something and I somehow managed to get up and start doing it, and then someone comes and tells me, yeah, so how about you do this? Well, now I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh my God. Like, what is that called? Is there an actual phrase for that? Because I hate when that happens to me.
Something defiant disorder. It's a common comorbidity. I forgot the whole name, but
it's so frustrating. Common. Yeah. Like, if I'm in the middle of folding laundry, and like when I used to live with my mom, if I'm in the middle of folding laundry, my mom comes in the room like, oh, are you folding your laundry? Are you going to fold the rest of the laundry that's in the laundry room? Well, it was on my mind. I was going to do it. Now that you've told me to do it, now I don't want to fucking do it anymore. Thanks for ruining everything. If you would have just left me alone, I could have got all my tasks done. Leave me alone. Awful.
Just let me be.
Just let me do me. I think that's that can kind of be like a seesaw. Like, I tell people all the time, like, when you have, especially when you're in a relationship with somebody who has a mental illness, and if that mental illness is like anxiety or depression or ADHD, which are very common nowadays, sometimes my advice to them is to just let them be. Like, let them do them. Like, if you notice that they are cleaning, they may not be cleaning because the house is dirty. They may be cleaning because there's so much going on in their brain right now that the only way they know how to slow down the thoughts is to clean something, is to physically move their body and go do something. So, like, getting in their way is literally stopping their coping mechanism so that they can figure out how to stop the racing thoughts in their brain. So then when you get in the way, you are now interrupting their process for self-healing and self-regulation. Leave them alone. Like, let them do what they're doing. If they're not hurting themselves and they're not hurting anybody else, let them do what they need to do. When it starts to get harmful, then yeah, intervene. Like, if they're doing something like, you know, they've been rotting in bed for 8 hours and they haven't had a single sip of water, or they haven't eaten a meal or anything like that, maybe like poke them a little bit and be like, hey, are you okay? Like, I brought you a sandwich. Do you want to eat something maybe because you haven't eaten in 8 hours and you've just been kind of lying here? Like, are you okay? Do you need anything? Cool, intervene then. But otherwise, it's a seesaw. Like, you really have to know who you are talking to and who you are intervening with when you decide to intervene. And how. So this is something that, like, in the past I have struggled with my mother in terms of, like, it is not what you're saying that I am disliking. It is how you are presenting it to me and how you are saying it, because you could have said what you said in a much calmer, quieter, nicer way, and I would have responded much easier to that. I would have been so much nicer about it. But because you decided to approach it with overstimulation, attitude, accusatory messages, immediately I am now backed against a wall. I now feel like I am an animal trapped in a corner and I have to defend myself. And so when I defend myself, I am not nice about it. So sometimes you have to be careful and you have to know how to talk to the person you're talking to when you decide to intervene, because you can make it so much worse if you don't. And then you are responsible for, I don't want to say you're fully responsible for the response, but you are partially responsible for the response, because if you choose to negatively intervene, you have to be prepared for negative consequences. That's just how that works. Oh, I'm so happy everybody's chatting. I love you guys so much. What the fuck?
So good.
So many good things are being said right now. Kyrie, gee, why didn't I just think of switching off my brain? Gee, I guess it never once occurred to me. A fully educated, intelligent individual, not once did I ever think about just turning it off. Or, like back in the day with the old game cartridges, let me just take the brain out and just blow on it a little bit, shake it up, and then just put it right back in. Let me do that.
Dust it off.
Yeah, let me just press the reset button. It's totally fine. I do want to address what Lady Lycan said, because they did ask a question saying, what can they do to be a better wife to their husband who has ADHD? I do see some people that did answer them already. I do like what Fico said about communication. I think the biggest thing when dealing with anybody who has like a mental illness is to openly communicate, because everybody's expectations are different. How my partner handles me when it comes to like my anxiety and my ADHD and my like neuroses is not the same way that somebody else would handle and like deal with their partner's like mental illnesses. So it changes on a person to person basis. But the key is to communicate. So like it's something I struggled with for a really long time, and I still kind of struggle with. I have had to start recognizing when I feel really anxious about something, and not taking it out on my partner, and just kind of gently letting him know like, hey, today, mentally, not it, babes. I am not having a good mental day. In this moment, I am incredibly overstimulated. My brain is working really hard. I'm literally giving myself a headache. And so I am not going to be receptive as receptive to things like gentle teasing or playing around or just like our usual like playful banter. Today, I'm not with it. So maybe like switch up the way you communicate with me today, because I am like on the edge and I do not want to snap on you. I do not want to take anything out on you. So basically like handle me with kid gloves in this moment, because I'm ready to pop essentially, and I don't want to do it on you. So that communication of understanding yourself is really important. But then as somebody who's not the one that has the mental illness or the struggle, just pay attention to who you're talking to. Pay attention, whether it's your friend, your partner, your mom, your sibling, family member, whatever. Pay attention to who you're talking to and understand when they need you to be firm and when they need you to just kind of sit back and like handle them with kid gloves and kind of like nurture them a little bit and soothe them and just kind of let them be, so that way they can work through what they're working through. And most importantly, do not take it personally. That's really, really difficult when you are the partner or the person who does not have the mental illness, dealing with somebody who does have a mental illness. Taking it personally is so easy to do, because immediately you're like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, is it me? Like, are you snipping because it's me? Like, are you mad at me? Like, no, babes, I'm snipping because my mind feels like I have 70 screwdrivers just kind of screwing in the opposite direction and loosening pieces, and they're all just falling out at the same time. So like, it's not you, it's literally my brain, but because you're there, you make it really easy for me to take it out on you. It's terrible. Oh man, I am like so
a lot of people are talking about well, actually what we're talking about, so like anger issues, reacting or overreacting to things. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about when it comes to ADHD. Emotional hyperreactivity is very, very, very common. And I don't mean that, we're like we're not at a point like all the time where you just need to poke us for us to like blow up or snap at you, but we're very, very sensitive when it comes to how you say things to us and how you handle us, basically. Unfortunately, it's not something we can change. You can work on your anger issues, you can work on how you react to things, but it's only to a certain extent. Like, you cannot just make your emotional sensitivity go away. When it comes to the whole how do I handle this, first and foremost, what works for me might not work for other people, so take this with a grain of salt. Because to this day, I'm still learning, how to handle myself when I'm having big feelings. Because I'm not, speaking of, Carrie mentioned earlier comorbidities with ADHD, and that's also something I wanted to touch down on. A very common comorbidity to ADHD is RSD, which is rejection sensitive disorder. And RSD basically, to just put it in simpler terms, you don't handle actual rejection, but also perceived rejection or projected rejection easily. And it doesn't need to be actual rejection. It could just be someone, saying something a certain way that took a certain way that they didn't necessarily mean. You misreading people's tones, especially over text. I notice it happens a lot over text. I don't know how to read people's tones over text, and 9 times out of 10, someone could just say something, and I'd be like, "Why are they saying this to me? Or why
Yep.
are they being rude? Or why are they like, what did I do?" And so that initial reaction that happens afterwards is not something you can control. What you can control is what you do from there on. So, what I've been getting myself to the habit of doing is one, asking for clarifications if I'm in the headspace to do so right then and there, meaning, I'm sorry, that's the vibe I picked up. Do you mind, elaborating a bit more? Or what did you mean by that? Unfortunately, a lot of people, take it as an offense for some reason. Like, what do you mean what I mean by that? Like, I said what I said. What else am I supposed to mean by saying that? So, when you're someone who is close to someone with ADHD or any mental illness in general, especially when it comes to this, be patient. When they ask you to elaborate or when they need clarifications or explanations, or be like, hey, can you maybe try rewording that or rephrasing that in a way that makes more sense? I know it's annoying sometimes, but I can guarantee it'll make communication easier, and they will appreciate the heck out of that. And afterwards, let's say, again, they said something and I took it a certain way. If I'm not able to ask for explanations right then and there, what I tell them is, hey, this little thing bugged me. You might have not meant it that way, but I'm not able to continue this conversation for the time being. I need some space, or I need to take a step back. And so what I do is I take a step back. I take like some time for myself. I self-regulate, and then I go back to the conversation. So giving them their space when they need it is also very, very important. And like you said, Kissy, please don't take it personal. When we distance ourselves to self-regulate, it's not because we don't want to talk to you. It's not because you're annoying. It's not because we don't want to be around you, but we need to self-regulate. Otherwise, we are going to snap at you, and that is going to cause problems when, we don't want to do that. But if you keep on poking us and poking us and poking us, at some point, like if you keep on poking a balloon, at some point the balloon is just going to explode. Exact same thing here. So, if we ask for space, give us our space. And if we ask for clarifications, please do them. And at the end of the day, it's going to take some time to get used to that dynamic, especially if you're someone who recently became aware of their ADHD or mental illness in general. It will take time to get used to that dynamic of the whole. I might say something, and it doesn't matter what my intention is when I say this thing. At the end of the day, they might take it a certain way, and I can't do anything about it. What I can do is, talk to them afterwards, communicate, and find a middle ground or find a solution after the fact. So we're not saying walk on eggshells, because nobody needs to walk on eggshells. That's not necessary. But be patient, be understanding, and trust me, you will get back what you're putting out into them. You just need to learn. And they will also learn, your communication styles. But you need to keep in mind that just because you view things a certain way does not mean they will also view them the same way. And it doesn't mean neither of you is wrong. Again, it's just the whole, your brain is this way, but also your personal experience and the way you view things, your trauma even, or emotional baggage, all of this is going to shape your viewpoint in life. So, lady, I don't know if that answers your question and your husband's. I know it's rocky. I know it's tough. But it's a very good step that both of you are aware of it and you're aware of that emotional hyperactivity. And I know it is way easier said than done, and I mean way easier said than done. Someone said earlier in chat that communication is hard, and I absolutely agree.
Oh, yeah. Some people do not know how to communicate. Yeah. Because, like, talking is one thing. Like, anybody could talk. Just open your mouth, yap, yap, yap. Like, anybody can talk. However, a communicator, a good communicator, is somebody who not only talks so that they can be heard and understood, but somebody who talks in reaction to what you have said to let you know that you have been heard and that they are fully invested in helping you get to a solution not try to tell you what to do and not try to talk just to talk. I think a very big journey in my life that has helped me so much over the last 10 to 15 years has been listening simply just to listen, not listening with the intent to talk back, not listening with the intent to react, listening only to listen. And then if I feel like something absolutely needs to be said, then sure, we'll discuss that. We'll talk about that. But sometimes people talk to you because all they want is somebody to just listen to them and acknowledge them and acknowledge that, hey, even though sometimes you might not agree with what is being said, as long as you listen to them and let them know, yes, I am actively listening to you. Yes, I am taking in everything you're saying. And I am doing so because I am trying to understand you and I am trying to understand where you are coming from. So that way, whatever problem we are currently facing, I can perhaps be a little bit better equipped to help you and help us tackle the problem together. I just think when you have somebody who has ADHD and you are talking about that emotional, reactivity and whatnot, sometimes understanding that when somebody snaps on you, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't always have anything to do with you. It doesn't have anything to do with anything you said or anything you did. It's very, very much about what is going on in our own head. My favorite thing to do, and by favorite thing to do, I mean least fucking favorite thing my brain does to me, is I love it when my brain takes something super, super tiny and blows it up and creates scenarios in my head. And then not only does it create the scenarios, it then attempts to get me to believe that said scenarios are real. And so when I'm reacting, I am reacting to a perceived reality I have created in my head that does not actually exist in real life. How can I convince somebody that does not have a mental illness that what I am thinking is true in my head is so true to me? It is so real to me. But if it's not real to you, it just looks like I'm coming out of my face to come out of my face. That I'm just being a bitch, or I'm just being loud, or I'm just nagging, or I'm just arguing to argue type thing, where it's like, you have to meet me where I'm at. You have to understand that my reaction is because I created something in my head. I created a reality that does not exist for you, and it does not exist for most people, but in my head, it exists for me. And so I love the saying that says, if I tell you that you hurt me, you do not get to decide that you didn't. You do not get to tell me you did not, because half of communicating is not only communicating, but understanding what is being communicated to you, listening to what is being told to you, and understanding that you cannot take it personally when somebody says, hey, perfect example. I asked you 2 days ago if you could please make an appointment for our dog for the vet because I'm busy and I just have a lot going on. Did you get that done? And if they say, oh no, I kind of forgot. When I approach that conversation in my head, I have already perceived the reality that when I ask you, hey, did you make the appointment for the dog? You are then going to tell me, I did make the appointment for the dog. It's this day at this time with this doctor. We have to leave at this time to get there. I'm going to be getting out of work at this time so I can meet you at the house and we can go pick up the dog together and we can go to the vet. The day already exists in my head. The whole reality exists right there in my head. So the second you say no, that reality crumbles to pieces in my brain. And I have a difficult time grasping that reality no longer exists, that reality is not the reality that exists for you, but it was real for me. It was real for me. And so when you said no and that reality crumbled in my brain, I'm going to need time to process that. Yeah, I need time to process that, okay, well, what I thought was going to happen is not what's actually happening. I can't just on a dime be like, okay. I don't know how to do that. And in therapy, I am working on that. But that is how thought, what's the word? That is how, the anxiety part and the ADHD part and the hyperfixation part works. The perceived reality Perceived or not, it was real in my head. It was real for me. And so sometimes when you are dealing with somebody who does that, who creates realities in their head, when you give them what is the opposite of the perceived reality they have created in their head, immediately the response is going to be negative because it's not what I wanted to hear. It's not what I thought was real. It's not what I thought you were going to say. And so that does not hurt you. That hurts me because I set myself up for failure every single time. When I perceive these realities, I set myself up for failure. And so, in long roundabout way to answer Lady Likey's question, when your husband seems to be, coming out of nowhere, quote unquote, with anger issues or irritability, or just kind of being like, oh my God, like what is happening? What did you do? What is this? What is that? It's very possible that it's because he has created, especially since earlier in chat you did say he likes to fantasize when he zones out. And when you're fantasizing, you are quite literally creating realities in your head. These realities do not exist in real life. They only exist up here, and nobody else can see them except you. So when you create these realities and they do not live up to your expectations, you are immediately disappointed. And for some people, disappointment does not show up as sadness. It shows up as anger and frustration and irritation. And so when you have no outlet for that and you have no emotional regulation, the only response is to shoot it out. And whoever is there is whoever's going to get it. So if you happen to be there when he is in that mood and he is just frustrated about something or angry about something and it had nothing to do with you, because you are there, you're the one that's getting the brunt of it, unfortunately. That is not a you issue, that is a him issue. He needs to start learning how to emotionally regulate his responses and start to look inward and think about, I'm frustrated right now. Like, half the problem is acknowledging it, being like, oh my God, I'm irritated. And I say to my partner all the time, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so irritable right now. He'll be like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. That's kind of his cue to be like, leave me alone. Leave me alone, because there's something brewing. There's something brewing in my head. I don't know what it is yet. I haven't figured it out. But if you keep asking me, you're going to find out. We're going to find out together. And it's not going to be fun for either one of us. So sometimes, in those situations, he needs to start to learn how to look into himself and be like, okay, I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm irritated. Why? And then maybe he just needs to step outside. Take like 5 minutes, breathe in some air and be like, okay, what am I actually angry at? What am I actually frustrated with? What am I actually mad at? Because it's not you. It's probably something in my head, in my reality, that did not match up to the reality you presented me with. And so now I have to tackle, okay, how do I make it so that I feel better about this new reality when the other reality was what I actually wanted, but now I have this reality? How do I make the two ends meet? And sometimes that takes time. Sometimes people they're not instantaneous with it. Sometimes people need a couple minutes. Sometimes people need a couple hours. Sometimes people need days to process this. You cannot force somebody to work on your timeline. You have to meet them where they're at. Absolutely important. Yes, you have to meet them where they're at. So I hope that helps, Lady Lycan.
Absolutely. No, you worded it beautifully, honestly. I'd like to add one thing, because like we said, it's good to take a step back, but not everybody is able to recognize the fact that they need some space at, that time. So sometimes people just end up snapping. And listen to this very, very carefully, because I sometimes still snap. I'm not perfect, but we're working on it. And so if you're someone who tends to snap at people in cases like this, I know you feel guilty. I know you feel like shit for it. I know the other person on the receiving end also feels like shit for it. You cannot undo what has already been done.
Period.
And I say this again. You can't undo what you've already done. What is important, once you've snapped, you're going to do your best to not snap. But let's say you do snap. What's important is what you do afterwards. And first and foremost, what you need to do is hold yourself accountable. And by that, being like, oh, I did snap. Yes, I didn't mean to, but my intention right here, right now, doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I still hurt you when I snap. I did not mean to snap. What can I do from here on? That is very, very important. And that's something I've noticed a lot of people unfortunately do not do. Like they just snap and they're like, yeah, but this is how I am, I can't help it. Yes, this is the way you are. Yes, maybe you can't help it, but that doesn't mean you should just, let things be afterwards, because at the end of the day, you still hurt someone when you lashed out on them. And so what I personally do, again, take it with a grain of salt. What works for me might not work for you. But first and foremost, I validate the person's feelings, being like, yes, okay, thank you for letting me know that I hurt you. Of course, I did not mean to, but your feelings are valid. You have every right to feel the way you do. First and foremost, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? Is there something I can do to, help you navigate that feeling? Like, do you need space? Do you need reassurance? Do you need words of affirmation? Anything really. That's one. And two, would you like to hear my point of view? Because I notice a lot of people just tell you, like, hey, actually, this is what was going on in my head, and this is why I snapped, this is what happened. But sometimes in the heat of the moment, people don't need to hear that, and they don't want to hear that. All they're focused on is how they feel, and that's very valid. So I like to ask, I'm like, once you're calmed down, or now, depends on what you need, would you like to hear my point of view and what was going on through my head when that happened, so you can understand me better? So also say that goes back to the whole communication is very important, and holding yourself accountable, even for things you cannot change, is key. And, understanding at the end of the day that we're not perfect. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. What matters is what you do after you've made that mistake.
I agree. The accountability part is so incredibly important, especially if you are the person in the situation that has the mental illness. And I like what you said earlier. You said something about being hyper aware when you are the one with the mental illness, which makes it more frustrating, because the more aware you are of it, the more frustrating it is when you lose control of it, when you have no grip over it. Especially as Virgos, I can definitely speak for all Virgos when I say that we have control issues, that like when it comes to not being in control of things, it is incredibly triggering. It is incredibly difficult for me to let go of control in certain situations, well, in most situations. And so being the one with the mental illness and feeling it in my body and understanding how it flows through me is half the battle. But then when it triggers and it pops and I have no control over it, it's even worse for me, because I hate not having control over anything. So sometimes, there are little, like, I don't want to say comorbidities, because your horoscope's not a comorbidity, but if you are predisposed to things and you have some other things like control issues, or if you're like non-confrontational, or if you fear that every discussion is going to turn into an argument type of thing, it can make communicating even more difficult, because you are fearful of how your words and your actions and your attitude are going to be perceived by who you are talking to. I do really like, I pinned it and I want to address it before it goes away. Treats had a really good question a little bit ago, said, was there a moment when your ADHD made you see the world differently than everyone around you, and how has that moment changed the way that you move through life? I can let you answer this one first, because that's a good one.
Two moments actually. The first one being the whole, me going through school and just finding out that life is not that hard in academia for most people around me. Because, I always thought, my domain is hard, my degree is hard, so it makes sense for me to have to work that much and study for that many hours. Until I found out that actually most people just don't need to do this, because it just comes to them naturally, and they can get a lot of work done in just 2 hours. They just tell themselves, hey, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to study 2 hours, I'm going to get a lot done, and they actually get things done. And so when I found out that, to a certain extent, my ADHD puts me to a disadvantage in academia, I'm like, well, that's just unfair.
Seriously.
It's not even my fault. Why is this happening? Why do I have to work overtime and spread myself thin to get things done just to get the same results as everybody else, when they barely need to do that much work, and then they still get good grades? And I'm like, that's unfair. Why is that happening? And I am medicated for my ADHD, thankfully, which we will get to the medication a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about that. I know a lot of individuals with ADHD prefer to be unmedicated, and that's perfectly fine. But unfortunately, I found out that what's best for my brain, especially as a full-time student, as someone who's going and getting more degrees, I need the medication to function. And as we all know, you need to pay for your medication. And so when I found out that I need to pay for something to get my brain working when other people, have their brain working for free, I can't even tell you how much outrage I felt because it's like, why?
In this
That's
economy,
unfair.
ugh. You get
That's
to have it
unfair.
for
Why do they
free.
get to do this for free? I
I have to
don't.
pay. What the frick?
Just to take something and fold my laundry.
Yeah, literally.
But that's unfair. And the second one, I'm not gonna go into details because it's not today's topic, but a lot of my sense of justice is very, very, very strong. And so with the way everything that's been happening in the world over the past 2-3 years, I noticed that I feel things very, very strongly compared to a lot of people around me. And so I'm like, this is disgusting. I'm outraged. How are you so neutral about it? And, a lot of people's answers to this is, well, it's not happening where I am, or it's not happening to anybody I know. So yes, of course it's sad, but why would I feel so strongly about it? I'm like, how could you not? And this brings us back to the whole emotional hyperreactivity aspect of just feeling things so, so, so deeply, to a point where sometimes it makes it genuinely hard for me to eat or get out of bed because of, I just read the news and that's fucked up. How are people not mad about this whole thing? And then some other people just going on with their day because they don't feel things that deeply. And so both of those things have genuinely changed the way I view the world. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to work with my ADHD rather than against it. Because at this point, it's there. I can't make it disappear. And if I just keep on going against it, it's just going to make my life harder. And for what?
Yeah, I agree.
I hope that answers your question. Was it treats? I think it was treats.
It was, yeah. It was treats. The message disappeared, but I do remember it was treats. Yeah, I definitely agree about the whole, especially when it comes to the whole feeling thing. I don't really consider myself to be a sensitive person, but when it comes to, okay, what I will say is this. I don't consider myself a sensitive person, but I do consider myself an emotional person, in the capacity that when I do feel emotions, I do feel them deeply. Especially things like sadness and disappointment and anger. I do feel those things very, very deeply. However, it's interesting to hear you talk about how, your perception of your emotional capacity versus somebody else's emotional response to the same thing, especially, with everything going on in the last 2-3 years. We have been given plenty to be frustrated and angry at. And so sometimes it can come across as insensitive to me when I feel, very strongly about, say, for example, when Roe v. Wade got overturned, I was outraged. I was on a rampage on my social media as I was angrily texting my cousins. I was angrily talking to my brother and my partner about it. And I just started to notice, even across the people the closest to me in my life, that my emotional response to Roe v. Wade being overturned versus the emotional response my father had to it, or the emotional response that my best friend had to it. Were they outraged? No, but that didn't mean that they didn't care about my feelings towards it, or just in general. Especially when I started to explain why I felt the way I felt and why as a woman it was so outraging and so upsetting for something like this to happen. And I remember feeling offended when certain people in my life were just like, oh, well, that sucks. I'm like, that sucks. That's it? That's all you have to give me? I'm over here in almost tears thinking about how this is going to affect me in the future as a woman, capable of having children, how this is going to affect other women, how this is going to affect me as a medical professional who is going to be working with pregnant women. What do you mean that sucks? That's it? You're not outraged? And it took me a while to kind of understand that it's well, it's not that they don't care about it. It's just that their capacity for the emotional response to it was a lot lower than mine. And it didn't mean they cared. It just meant they didn't feel it as deeply as I did. So having to grasp that and understand that, like, yeah, some people just don't feel as deeply as I do. Some people just don't get pissed to the extent that I do. Some people don't go 0 to 100 like I do. That doesn't make their emotional responses any less valid than mine. It just makes them different. And I think, to answer Treat's question as well, a lot of my mental health journey has actually been realized and actualized in my relationship, because I have had the same partner for 15 years. I've done so much growing and so much changing as a person. A lot of my mental health journey has been influenced by the versions of myself I had to become throughout it the entire time, in recognizing that, wow, I didn't realize that the way that I was approaching relationships before this one had a lot to do with my self of entitlement, had a lot to do with the things I felt I deserved to be given based off of XYZ, or based off of what I was raised with, or stuff like that. So it took a lot of like looking in the mirror to start to grasp, like, maybe some of my things are not entitlement. Maybe some of my things are from anxiety. Maybe I didn't realize that I'm not anal retentive. I'm just anxious. Like, I'm just really anxious about certain things. And it took me so long to even like consider talking to my doctor about it, because of the stigma, because of being like, well, shit, I don't know anybody else in my family that feels like this or thinks like this or deals with stuff like this. So like, I don't know. I don't want to be like the outcast. I'm already kind of the outcast, as it were. I don't want to make that even worse. Like, people already think I'm weird for being into anime and watching Japanese, animes and collecting books and dressing in cosplays and stuff. Like, people in my family already think I'm fucking weird. Like, now I'm just going to make it even worse. But a lot of like learning about mental health and learning about myself shaped how I move in the world, because I think it's just given me a better perspective, a different perspective, and just like a deeper capacity to understand people and to try to meet them where they're at. I just notice habits in my day-to-day life when I talk to people that 10, 15 years ago were not there at all. Like, one of my friends very jokingly, when she makes a mistake, even if it's something small, like, we'll get together for girls' night and I've asked her to pick up like a bottle of wine to bring to my house, and then she forgets to bring said bottle of wine, which is not a big deal. It's just a bottle of wine. Who cares? We could all get in the car, go to the liquor store and grab it together. Who cares? It's not a big deal to me. But to her, because of the way her brain works, because she forgot it, immediately she is like super, super hard on herself, very down on herself, and immediately starts calling herself stupid. And it's like, oh my God, like I forgot the wine bottle because I'm so fucking stupid type of thing. 10, 15 years ago, there's a part of me that would have just let her do that. That would have just been like, well, if that's how she feels, that's how she feels type of thing. But now, as somebody who is very much like, I'm trying to understand why my friends are the way they are, why they act the way they act, and why they say what they do. And so in my day-to-day life, I'm constantly trying to get people to see themselves for who they are, and trying to get them to understand that the things that they say and the things that they do come from places that some of it's not normal. So when she talks like that, I am constantly on her ass being like, you're not stupid. Like, why are you talking about yourself like that? You shouldn't say that about yourself. Would you say that to me if I was the one who forgot the wine bottle? Like, would you call me fucking stupid? No. So then why would you call yourself that? That's not normal. That is a manifestation of your anxiety because you have been conditioned by something or someone to feel the way you do when you make mistakes. That's not normal. That is not a normal emotional response. So the way that I move now in life, understanding who I am mentally, helps me now to attempt to understand everybody else mentally, attempt to understand where everybody else is coming from, because it makes it so much easier for me to do that than to just think that certain people are just terrible. Well, that's not entirely true. Certain people are not. Most people, I will say, most people are not inherently terrible. They just have very poor coping skills, very poor emotional regulation, very poor communication skills. And so if they only had the proper education and the proper nurturing, they would be entirely different people. And seeing people in that light changes things for me. It's changed so much for me in the last 10 years and helps me to better understand and better figure out ways to meet people where they're at rather than just writing them off and walking away. And sometimes that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes that hurts me more than it hurts them, but that's just how it works for me now.
We're just too understanding, because you can understand or try your best to understand where someone's coming from as much as you want, but at the end of the day, if they're not also, putting in the work and trying to, help you understand and give you the space and, allow you basically to be there for them and help them, you can't do anything. Like, you cannot help someone who does not want to get help.
Period.
Now, mind you, some people are fully aware that they need help, but they just can't go and ask for help, or they can't allow themselves to let someone help them. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you can give them as much support as you want. You can listen to them talk about the exact same thing over and over and over again. You can let them trauma dump even. But at the end of the day, if they don't do anything about it, regardless of whether they can or not, but like if they don't do anything about it, there's nothing you can do.
100%.
As much as, as understanding as you might be, there's nothing that you can do.
Attempting to meet people where they're at comes with the understanding that, actually, I'm going to paint it like this. Say, for example, there's a stage. You're on one end of the stage. The person you are trying to understand is on the other side of the stage. With every step forward towards each other that you make, that step cannot be taken without understanding and comprehension and communication. However, sometimes one person will take more steps than the other, and some people will get to the middle of understanding and they will not be able to move any further because they've done everything on their part to understand and to attempt to meet you where you're at. And the other person is now playing catch up. But some people are unable to take certain steps because they do not have the proper resources and they do not have the proper knowledge. And so sometimes you will stand in the middle all fucking day, for days, for weeks, for years, attempting to understand and meet somebody where they're at. But at some point, you have to realize they're never going to get there, at least not where they're at. And sometimes that involves having to leave them where they're at. Meeting people where they are is wonderful. It's a wonderful skill to practice. It's a wonderful thing to attempt to do. But sometimes you meet and you meet and you meet and you attempt so hard and it doesn't work. And then you have to then leave them where they are at. That is, and I talk about this on my channel a lot. That's what I had to do with my ex-best friend of 18 years. Out of those 18 years, I spent about 10 attempting to meet her where she was at. And it didn't take me until 10 years later to realize that I did all that work. I did all that pushing. I did all that encouraging and soothing and caring and loving. And she just could not meet me in the middle, no matter how hard she tried, because she just wasn't able to take those steps where she was. She had to do a lot of her own work that she was unable to do. And so after standing in the middle for 10 years, I had to be like, man, I am so sorry to have to do this, but I have to leave you where you're at, because where you're at is where you're at. But where I'm at, I need to keep moving forward, and I cannot do it if I continue to attempt to meet you where you're at. So unfortunately, I must leave you there instead. That's hard. It was incredibly difficult to do, but it was incredibly necessary, because ever since then, I don't know about her because we don't talk anymore, and that was about 4 years ago. Ever since then, I have done so much moving forward, so much changing, so much growing, and I hope and pray to God she has done the same. But I won't know because it's no longer my place, and I cannot involve myself in trying to meet her where she's at, because I'm too busy now trying to meet me where I am at, trying to figure out where I am at right now. And so that also comes with a deep, deep understanding of your limitations and your capacities. Just like Kiso had said in the message that I pinned, everybody experiences everything differently, and everybody's responses to things are going to be affected by how they were raised, what they were exposed to, what they were given, and what they were not given. And so
Absolutely.
we have to understand that each person is going to feel, think, and experience things differently because of where they're at. And so you do your best. And if you can meet them, great. If they can meet you, even better. Then the mutual understanding turns into mutual helping towards reaching the common goal. But if that doesn't happen, that's not your fault. You do what you can. You really, really do.
Exactly. You've done all you could do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we said this in one of your streams. I think I said it in chat, actually. We will always want to see them eat, just not with us and not at our table anymore.
Yes, you did say that. You actually said that during the Sunday reset with Kiso.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got to talking about forgiveness. We got to talking about, like, you know, the difference between forgiving somebody and staying, and the difference between forgiving somebody and walking away. And you did say that. We would always love to see them eat. Absolutely. And even now, I wish nothing but the best for her as a person. I'm never going to wish ill will. I'm never going to hate her. She is where she is, and she is who she is. But I just cannot afford to have her sit at my table anymore. It's just not helpful. It's not helpful for her, and it's certainly not helpful for me. So I love that saying. Yes, we always want to see them eat, but you know what? Sometimes you just can't do it at my table, dude. You just gotta find an, or as my mother likes to say, you don't gotta go home, but you gotta get the fuck out of here. So
Yeah. I love that.
Mama Sensei's from New York and a little loose, so you know.
We love Mama Sensei.
we love our mamas in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if you love your mama. It's okay if you don't. I mean that sincerely. I sincerely mean that. It's okay if you don't love your mom. Not everybody has a great relationship with their mom.
That is true.
Yeah. Thank you, Fizz, for saying I'm aware and educated. Thank you. It came from a lot of experience, unfortunately. I know when people are like, well, you talk so nicely about these things. Thank you. 10 years ago, I could not. So that means a lot to me to be perceived and recognized for the amount of work that was put in to be able to get to this place. I'm still going through. Hi, Super. Hi, friends. Hi, everybody. Fizz said, facts, you can love someone with all your heart, but if someone else doesn't have the tools or is ready to make the jump, it's about compatibility as well as how much you love them. And it does hurt, but you have to do what's best for you. I say to people all the time, just because you love somebody does not make it right. It does not make it right. You cannot love everybody through everything. You cannot. I was just having this discussion with my mom yesterday where we were literally talking about a mutual of ours and, you know, how they're going through a relationship. And I literally told my mom, you can love as hard as you can. You can. And that capacity goes pretty fucking deep. You can love somebody as much as you want. But there are some things you cannot love people through. You just can't. You cannot. And that makes it harder when you have to walk away from them because you're not leaving them because you don't love them. You're leaving them because you love them. Because where you're leaving them is the safest place for them to be, but it cannot be with you anymore. You cannot be there to hold their hand and attempt to love them through things that they are not willing to fix and work on their own. And so you have no choice sometimes to just be like, listen, I love you, but I love me more. And that's also something I tell people, that at the end of the day, the most important person will always be you. I do not care. I will, and people say all the time, like, even more than my parents, even more than your parents, even more than my kids, even more than your kids, even more than your dog, your cats, your friends, your cousins. I don't care who it is. You are always going to be the most important person in the entire world. And so at the end of the day, if you have to choose you, you have to choose you. You have to love you more than you love anybody else. You have to. Because how can you love others if you do not give that love to yourself first? There's just no way. really quick, I mean, you can sit with chat, or actually, I kind of encourage everybody, because we have been talking for a little while.
We should take
We
a
should
little
definitely, yeah, we're gonna take a little break. I'm gonna send us to BRB screen. Oops, I spelled pee wrong. That's so funny. Sorry. Okay. So let's take a pee break. I'm gonna say like 5-ish minutes. Everybody get up, stretch. This is so important. Get something to drink. If you need a little snacky, if you want to like do a lap around your house or just kind of get outside and take a breather, please do. We are gonna do pee break, and I'm gonna send you guys to BRB screen. I'm gonna mute in Discord as well. Yeah, and we'll be back, friends. Okay, I'll see you soon.
You ready?
Okay, friendies, be back. Oh. Nick knock, I back. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I literally, like, as I was getting ready to walk downstairs, my phone started ringing, and it was my mom, and I was like, crap, I gotta go. Got a blast. Everything's fine, though.
We're all good.
Okay. There we go. Whee! Cool. Okay, so, it is 11:30. We have about an hour left in this segment, because I would love to chat for much longer, but I have been roped with a responsibility now. So that's why Mama Sensei was calling me. She was like, I need you to do me a favor, and it has to be done at 1 o'clock. And I was like, oh my God, okay, fine. So with that being said, let me just kind of scroll through and see. I imagine you were chatting and letting everybody know that they're wonderful and amazing.
Everybody is wonderful and amazing.
Yes, I love everyone here. Thank you all so much for chatting. Mama Sensei was a bartender, I guess. She was not. Fun fact, Mama Sensei was, what can I say about that part? Mama Sensei used to work for the government, and then she became a nurse. So, what a weird, like, I don't know. Mama Sensei she segued a lot. Yeah, I know. She worked for the government for like, I think 2-3 years maybe. And then she went and became a nurse. So I was like, all right, Mama Sensei, listen, sometimes you just got a 180 and it's totally fine.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me... Oh my gosh, I am so not caught up. Hi, roaming. Bye, roaming. Thank you for lurks. Also, to anybody that is lurking, thank you so much for lurking. I say it all the time.
Really
lurkers are like, lurkers are like the backbone, really. Y'all are just amazing. We love you all so much. Okay, so one thing I do want us to just kind of tap into, because I do feel like it's going to take a little bit longer to talk about this part, so I do want to make sure we address it. So one of the questions you had mentioned earlier, so let's chat about it now. When it comes to ADHD, how do you feel about... I'm trying to think of how to word this question. When it comes to medicating for ADHD, how do you feel on the terms of medicating for ADHD versus not medicating for ADHD, and why? And then you can also talk about like some of the meds for ADHD that you may or may not have tried, or like you know or have experience with, or anything like that.
Yeah, so I think we can do this, and then we have a question that I wanted us to talk about, but let's do this and then we can get to it. I have it.
Do you want me to pin? Oh, okay, perfect. I was just going to say.
Yeah, he's already pinned it. So when it comes to medication, a lot of people don't prefer using medication. A lot of people do. Mm-hmm. So it's really gonna depend on you and your experience. In my case, because I'm a student, because I need to focus, I was like, let me try. And I have tried a bunch of them, honestly. And I'm currently, it's been a year and a half of me on one medication out of all of them, and it's been going well. But I'm gonna talk about like the medications, the types and everything, and I have the whole thing pulled up, so I'm not like talking. But basically, the most common class of medication, as we call them, for ADHD are the psychostimulants. Mm-hmm. So it's basically all the ones y'all have probably heard about. So you have Concerta, Ritalin, Bifenton, Adderall, Vyvanse. Obviously, the way they work is very similar, but they're not the same when it comes to like their structure. And you also have like the short-term ones, the long-term ones. So it's really going to depend on you, your body, and at the end of the day, what you need the medication for. Some people
Mhm.
need them to just go to work. Some people need them, I don't know, to do little tasks. Some people need them for a longer period of time, like myself, to go to class from like 8:30 to 5 p.m. and then study afterwards. Um, but usually what they do is they start you on stimulants unless there are like contraindications such as heart issues, which is
Mhm.
why typically what they do is they do like an ECG for your heart and then they check that you're all set and then they do blood tests. Once that is all done, if it's something you would like to try, then they prescribe the medication. So they did an ECG for me and they were like, you're good, you're good, because I have family history of heart disease. Thankfully, knock on wood, on my end, so far I'm good.
Yes, let's
But
keep
they were
praying
like,
for that.
yeah. So they were like, you're good. So would you like to try this? Because prior to that, I was working with someone in special ed, who we tried to tackle everything that would be non-medication. So planning, ways to study, coping mechanisms when it comes to preparing for my exams and as such. And that's funny little thing about that is every single thing they try to suggest to me is something I was already doing. And so we did like 2 sessions and they were like, "Yeah, I genuinely cannot do anything more for you.
Mm.
You're doing everything already. I would recommend checking with a healthcare professional to see, if medication would be right for you." Like only 2 sessions and they're like, I can't do anything when it comes to, what I have as recommendations." I even apparently taught them a thing or two they were not aware of like some websites I like to use when I study methods other than Pomodoro. So that's when I was like, okay, I will try medication, see how that works. So they started me on Concerta.
Mhm.
Concerta and Ritalin are very similar. They're both methylphenidate.
Mhm.
Concerta is more long term when it comes to how it works, and then Ritalin is more like short term. Obviously, they tell you, for example, long action. It's supposed to work for like 12 hours, but at the end of the day, it's going to depend on your body and your metabolism. Some people are faster metabolizers than other people. But yeah, they started me on Concerta. Concerta almost quite literally killed me.
Oh
My body
gosh.
had very severe side effects to it to the point where my resting heart rate was at like 180.
Oh my
And a lot
god.
of my classes, yeah, a lot of my classes were like on the third floor, so I had to take the stairs and I would get to class with like a BPM of 200. I almost nearly passed out one time and that's when I was like, let's not.
Yeah, holy shit.
So we switched to Bifenton, and Bifenton genuinely made me depressed.
Oh.
And I was like, that's not gonna work either. And the thing is, it's not a doctor; it's a nurse practitioner, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and she has not been working for that long. So we kind of we were like learning about the whole medication thing, especially because to this day, apparently they don't teach them how to pick the proper medication for their patient. They're just like, here you go, all of these exist. Look at your patient, talk to your patient, and then prescribe whatever works. So it was a lot of back and forth of, okay, this is good, but this is not working. This puts my heart at risk because let's be honest, any stimulant medication puts a strain on your heart.
Mhm.
Um, I have not been able to go to the gym or exercise because of my medication because I just sit here and talk. I usually wear my Apple Watch to track it, but the battery died. I forgot to charge it. I forget a lot of things. See, back to the
Exactly.
forgetfulness of me.
Yep.
But usually when I'm just sitting and just talking, my resting is at like 110 just because of my medication.
Wow.
So I actually had to go and talk to my pharmacist, who was kind enough to spend like an hour of back and forth with me, being like, okay, this didn't work, this didn't work, and they were like, I would recommend you try Vyvanse.
Mhm.
And I don't remember what they told me about Adderall, but they were like, because this one and that one gave you these side effects, Adderall will probably do the same, if not worse.
Mhm.
So try Vyvanse. And I have been on Vyvanse for a year and a half now. Usually they start you on the lowest dose, which is 10 milligrams, and then they like up until you find your dose. I'm on 20
Mhm.
milligrams, and it's going well. The only problem is it tends to wear off faster than it's supposed to, and apparently it's just because of my metabolism. I just so happen to be a fast metabolizer.
Mm.
But I have noticed a big, and I mean big difference in how I just am when I'm medicated versus unmedicated. My grades, I'm gonna out myself because I don't usually like talking about my grades. But contrary to popular belief, I did not have good grades throughout all of my degree. Shocker, right? Actually, the first 2 years of my degree were me barely passing with a 2.4 GPA.
Oof.
Which, had I gone down to 2.3, I would have been put on academic probation, which is crazy.
Yeah, holy
So
shit.
I got diagnosed after my second year, so the summer right before my third one. And I went from literally that last spring semester from a 2.4 to a 3.9 the semester after, just because of my medication, because I was able to focus and study. And it helps me with my anxiety, which it doesn't happen to everybody. A lot of people actually get more anxious on stimulants. And that is something you need to flag to your healthcare professional, by the way. That, and I'm going to mention it just because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it for some reason. But ADHD medication can, in some cases, cause suicide ideation. If that happens, please talk to your healthcare professional. It is very important. It is not just you imagining things, especially if it's something that you did not experience before, something that does not usually happen with you. If you got put on ADHD medication and that started happening, please, for the love of everything, talk to your healthcare professional. That is not good. It means your body is not reacting to the medication in a good way. And that is very, very dangerous. So I know we don't like talking about it, but we need to. But it made a huge difference in my life. The one downside, well, other than the fact that, it makes my heart work overtime, is when it starts wearing off, I get severe headaches. Sometimes I get, like, my blood pressure starts fluctuating, and it changes my mood so severely. I get, like, very, very, very sad, and I get very severe mood swings once my medication starts wearing off.
Oh my God,
And that
I
goes
hate
back to
that.
the whole dopamine thing, because stimulant medications work on dopamine, but also norepinephrine, and both of them are very important for your humor, mood, and just general functioning. So you win some, you lose some, as they say.
Exactly.
A lot of people experience the same side effects I experience every day and decided they would rather not be on medication, which is perfectly fine. On my end, I'm going to be fully honest with y'all. If I did not have to study that much and if I did not have that much work to do, I would have not stayed medicated because it is very, very heavy on my body. But I don't have a choice. And so I've been trying to figure out ways to cope, to handle all of those side effects, but the good outweighs the bad, at least so far. But it's not for everybody, is what I'm trying to say. And that's perfectly fine.
No, I 100% agree. And I think when it comes to, I do not want to say all mental illnesses, because I do think some mental illnesses have a heavier need for medication than not, depending on the symptoms. However, with things like ADHD and anxiety and depression and whatnot, well, maybe not so much depression, but anxiety and like ADHD, some people work very, very well off the medications. Some people benefit very heavily from them, and it does like a 180 on their entire life, and it works very well for them. And I love that personally. But for some people, like yourself, the side effects can be like, they can be quite a doozy. It can be quite detrimental to your day-to-day life, and understanding like the difference between the detriments from your mental illness versus the detriments of your mental illness medications. At some point, it becomes, what battle do you want to fight? Do you want to fight the battle of ADHD every single day unmedicated, or do you want to fight the battle of medicated ADHD, but some side effects that you have to worry about? So sometimes it becomes like picking your battle and understanding that like you are going to have to make a sacrifice in some sense, in understanding that unfortunately the way a lot of mental health medications or just like psychological medications go, they are not one size fits all. They are very much like, how like Tylenol works the same for pretty much everybody, give or take some like comorbidities. If you take a Tylenol, more or less it's going to do the same thing for everybody. It's going to help, relieve pain, relieve inflammation. Cool, we love that. Something like Wellbutrin, That is not going to affect everybody the same way. And that has a lot to do with the brain chemistry. It has a lot to do with your body makeup. It has a lot to do with your tolerances towards certain types of medications and certain categories of medications. And so take it with a grain of salt. Like, talk to your doctors, talk to your psychiatrists, and just understand something I stress very heavily as a nurse who works with medications and works with doctors who prescribe medications. Definitely understand that a lot of mental health medications are not instantaneous. Like a Tylenol, you take it and within 2 hours it's going to work. And you're like, cool, that's the instant gratification. We love that. A lot, 90% of mental health meds do not work like that. They need time to build up in the body. Yes, exactly. They need time to build. They need time to actually start having build up of, I'm trying to think of the correct word here, like the feel good stuff. They need enough time to build up those reservoirs in your body in order for your body to start reacting to it. And so very often I will see people say, well, I've been taking these meds for a week and they're not doing anything. So why should I keep taking them? I'm not feeling any better. Well, they're not designed to work in a week. They're designed to work over a 3-month time span, which can be very frustrating because it's like, well, of course I want to take these meds because I want instantaneous gratification. I want what's going on in my head to be fixed. But when you approach mental health illnesses and you approach mental health medications, you have to do it with the understanding that you are going to have to try multiple medications. You may have to try different medications because sometimes even with the time frame that it takes to build up, they may not work for you. They may not, or rather they may work, but the side effects are a huge detriment and are just making your day-to-day life far more difficult than if you were not medicated. And so it is very much a throw darts at a dartboard and just kind of see what sticks. It is very much a trial and error type of thing. And I stress that because if you are going to move forward with being on a medication for a mental illness, you need that understanding, because if not, you are going to get frustrated and you're going to give up your medication regimen before it even has a chance to work, and you're going to write it off, when in reality, it does work. It's just, you really got to give it time. You got to give it, it's kind of like a watched pot. They say that by like, oh, a watched pot never boils. It's kind of the same thing. If you just kind of sit there and expect it to work instantaneously, you're going to be disappointed. Just know it takes some time. And same thing with like psychologists and doctors, even just like normal doctors, if you're not going for mental illnesses. Sometimes you have to try different ones. Sometimes one therapist, one psychologist, one doctor might tell you one thing, and you try it, and then they do another, and then eventually they're like, oh, well, we're all out of options. That doesn't mean you're out of options entirely. That just means that doctor has exhausted the capacity of his or her knowledge and understanding. And so now go to a different one, because maybe the next one you choose has more understanding and has more knowledge than the last one and can help you in a way that the last one could not. It's kind of like when you go to the store. When you like if you're going to the store because you want to go shopping for jeans, do you think the very first pair of jeans that you try on is going to be like the pair of jeans for you? No. I wish too. Shit, as a girl with freaking Spanish hips, I wish. But no, you have to try on different pairs. Most of the time when I go to try on jeans, I'll grab like 4 or 5 pair of jeans to try on just to see which ones fit and which ones I end up liking. It's the same exact thing with doctors, mental health professionals. You got to try them on. And if they're not the right fit, don't feel bad about leaving. Don't feel bad about being like, hey,
Exactly.
it's not going to work for me, doc. I got to go find a new one. Nothing against you, but like, it's not working for me. Yeah, it's not you, it's me. Like, so yeah, just definitely understand that too when it comes to medicine, everyone. It's not perfect. Just like everything in life, it's not perfect.
Yeah, and unfortunately, especially when it comes to mental health medication, a lot of healthcare professionals to this day don't know much about it. About the whole, for example, sometimes it takes 3 months to work, 3 to 6 months. I was saying in chat, antidepressants are a very well-known example of the whole, you need to wait for it to work. Especially if we're talking like a specific type of antidepressants, if we're talking SSRIs, they take a while to work, and a lot of people unfortunately expect them to just work like that. And that's just not how it works. something I interestingly learned in class and I had to do a presentation about was just how much a patient's expectations when it comes to how their medication is going to work actually affects how their medication works.
Yes.
And I remember I had to criticize the heck out of an article I read, because that was the point of my presentation, where the author was talking about how antidepressants are basically, effective just because of the whole placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree, but I also don't fully disagree, because yes, they work, but they can work to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're taking the medication and you're fully convinced that it's not going to help, our thoughts have been proven to actually change the chemistry of our brain. And so if you're wholeheartedly convinced that your medication is not going to work, even if it works to a certain extent, it's not fully going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've wired your brain and therefore body, because we said brain and body and brain together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to affect how it actually works in your body. Especially when it comes to, well, mostly antidepressants, but also, based on what I know, benzos, so for anxiety and or insomnia, they're very, very heavy. Yes, the nocebo placebo
Yep.
effect, it's crazy. And it's the more I learn about the brain, the more I feel like you can see how just passion I have for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep an open mind when it comes to medication, but also not hold very, very high expectations, because like Kissy was saying, at the end of the day, medications they're not a one fit for all, and they're not perfect. So they might just not work, or they might not work as much as you'd like them to, and that's, disappointing, sure, but that's fine. That's about to happen. It's just how biology and everything works. And it is really important for you to talk to your healthcare professional.
Yes.
And again, like Kissy said, if it doesn't work, it's fine to go and check with someone else, because nobody knows everything. Some people might know a bit more about certain stuff than others, but nobody is a know-it-all, as much as a lot of people like to proclaim they are. And please, please, please keep in mind that some healthcare professionals, again, some, not all, I'm not putting everybody in the same boat, but speaking from personal experience, because I have seen it happen with Ayamakeschaos, unfortunately, when it comes to mental health medication, some healthcare professionals will try to push you, or more than just nudge you, really push you towards a certain medication, even if that's not the one for you. It's not necessarily out of malice or anything, but more so their lack of knowledge about the whole thing. So all of that to say is, it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to be like, hey, you're the healthcare professional. Obviously, you're supposed to know best, but why?
Mm-hmm.
It is very important to ask why, because I remember that one healthcare professional trying to push antidepressants on Ayamakeschaos for her fibromyalgia, without even checking like her chart or any like medical and psychological tests. Nothing. Did not even mention any possible side effects of the medication. I was just sitting there like, what are you doing? And they were fully convinced that they were doing the right thing, because to them, this obviously is the solution to the neuropathic pain she feels because of her fibro. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Sure, it might be good, it might have been a good idea, but you're just pushing that onto her without giving her explanations, without even letting her ask you questions. So I yap a lot. That is my thing. But please, it's
So
good
do
to
we,
be curious.
babe.
Be curious, ask questions, go and seek more knowledge, and at the end of the day, trial and error. It's annoying, it's long, it costs money. Let's be honest, medication is expensive.
Way more expensive than it should be.
Right? Whether it's just insulin, diabetes medication, or even ADHD medication. My Vyvanse is around $110 per month.
Ugh.
For 30 pills.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm in Canada, so it's less than USD, but still. If I'm gonna pay that much for medication, the least I'm supposed to know is how it works and why it works. And if it's not working for me, you need, to tell me why, and we need to look into it.
Yes. No, I 100% agree. I think when it comes to medication, yes, you need to advocate for yourself. Like, you need to come into every interaction with every medical professional prepared to ask questions. Like, do not just blindly go along with everything that a doctor says simply because it's a doctor saying it. Not every doctor has your well-being in mind. That is really difficult for me to grasp sometimes as somebody who operates with only my patient's well-being in mind. But that is a hard truth to swallow, is that not every medical professional, mental health professional has your well-being in mind. Some people, this is just a job to them. This is just regurgitation of textbook information that they've been relying on, rather than actually using social cues and social skills to talk to patients and meet patients where they're at, and understanding like why this medication, even though widely in a textbook it's what you're supposed to prescribe, but for some reason with this patient it's probably not the best option. So I definitely think advocate for your health, advocate for your body. I mean, yeah, the doctors are prescribing it to you, but at the end of the day, who has to take that med? You do. You're the one that has to put it in your body. So I'm not putting anything into my body if I don't understand how it's going to work, if I don't understand what it's going to do to me. There's just no way I'm just going to throw a pill and be like, well, here's to hoping that works. Like, I don't really know what it does, but the pharmacokinetics of medications is incredibly important to understand. Even if you only just have like a base understanding, just knowing how a med works in your body does you wonders, because then you get to decide, okay, well, if I know this med does this, and maybe this med also affects my heart, and I have a heart condition, why am I going to take that med if I'm going to put my heart at risk? Because it's contraindicated. You cannot have this medication if you have this heart condition, but for some reason my doctor's pushing it. It's very possible your doctor doesn't even know you have this health condition because they didn't even look at your freaking chart. Yeah. And I can say that because I'm a nurse, that some doctors are freaking idiots. And there's been so many times I've had to argue with a doctor and be like, you cannot give this patient this med. You can't. Like, you can't do that.
Oh, but I'm the doctor.
Oh my God. Yeah, that didn't take me long to be a nurse to have a doctor be like, I'm the doctor, you're the nurse. Correct. I mean, correct. At the end of the day, sure, you are the doctor. I am the nurse. But who spends 95% of their time with the patient? Is it you? I didn't think so. So shut the fuck up and listen to me, dog.
Was on during their education and training.
Yeah, literally. Not the doctor. Sorry. I'm not saying doctors are terrible. I'm just saying, like, some doctors really need to. It's just, I'm just stating facts, you know? I'm just saying what I say.
One of my best friends is a CCRN, and the things she tells me about,
it's awful, dude. It's. And, like, as somebody who works in pediatrics, it's even worse because, like, you don't have to just deal with the patients. You have to deal with the parents. Like, the parents being like, oh, but my precious Timmy could never be on this medication. Your precious Timmy has a heart condition. What do you want me to do, babe? Do you want me to just not treat his heart condition because you think giving him drops of elderberry syrup is going to cure him? Like, I do not have time. I want to meet you where you're at. I love holistic medicine. I love traditional and modern medicine. I blend the both. This is why I say, like, I don't advocate super heavily for medication, but I also don't advocate super heavily against medication. I am very much like, you need to do what works for you. If holistic medication works for you and it is giving you the proper results and you're not killing yourself in the process, then you do that. If you don't want to go a traditional route, do that. However, if you don't go the traditional route and it's only making you worse, unfortunately, babe, you're going to have to go to the traditional route. That's the only thing that's left. So do what you will at your own peril. I will not be advocating either way. I'm advocating for your choice. I'm very pro-choice in lots of things, not just abortion. So let's see. So many good things being said in chat right now. I feel bad I'm not able to, like, address every single one. Please know that, like, even though we are not addressing every single thing that's being said, I am reading it.
We're reading.
Yes, and I'm taking it and plastering it onto my brain. Please know that is true. So one more question I want to ask you, just in case we run out of time, is I want to talk a little bit more about now the diagnosis process of ADHD and specifically the late diagnoses. So especially in your case, you did not get diagnosed with ADHD until recently. And remind me again how old you are, if you're comfortable.
I'm turning 23 this year. I got diagnosed at 21. So
okay.
It's been almost a year.
So 21 years of your life you lived not understanding that ADHD was going on, not understanding that like that was what was happening in your brain, not understanding that it wasn't just a you thing, it was a, well, this is how my brain is literally wired, and so something needs to be done. Oh my god, sorry, I pulled this and now it's like hanging off my computer. No. And so when it came to like when it comes to thinking about ADHD, like say for example somebody, say for example you're a doctor, somebody comes into your office, one of your patients, and they say, hey, I suspect, but I'm not entirely sure, that something is going on in the mental department, and I think it may or may not be ADHD. How exactly would we go about helping people who think they may have ADHD try to reach that diagnosis? Like, what are some things that we could look out for and teach people to look out for when it comes to suspecting ADHD?
Okay, so the way this whole thing started for me is kind of not like it's very atypical. It started with, well, when I was in school, the older I got, the harder my classes got. And then when I got to high school, it was very, very hard for me to just function without coffee. And that's kind of why I developed a caffeine addiction. But again, back because I am from the Middle East, so back there again, mental health is not they're not big on mental health. It's slowly, getting fixed, but back then we're talking like 2018, 2019 or so. I finished high school in 2020. I know I'm a youngin. But it wasn't until I got to like my senior year of high school that was like something might be up in here, like something's up in my brain. And then I moved here to Canada, and it started with me just going to therapy with like a regular therapist. And because a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of trauma, and I needed to work through that. And again, I started my degree. It was my freshman year, all of that, and I was heavily relying on caffeine to just do the most basic things. Once I was done, quote unquote done with therapy, my therapist was like, yeah, well, everything we could have addressed and targeted in therapy when it comes to like the emotional side, because I don't know if y'all know, but emotions can actually, and trauma can actually mimic ADHD symptoms when it comes to like a problem with your attention span and things of the sort. So she really did her best to target that first. Once that was all done with, he was like, okay, well, I think anything else that's left over is not due to your trauma. It's more so maybe just your brain itself. So then she suggested I go and try to get diagnosed. Now, mind you, I don't have a family doctor yet. If you know about the whole healthcare system in Canada, there are not enough doctors at all. So a lot of people are on waiting lists, which is relatively fine. Thankfully, I'm lucky enough to have a clinic on campus, so I started the process there. So what they did at first is refer me to a regular therapist again. It wasn't even like one session for like 3 hours. We discussed everything, touched back on what me and my previous therapist talked about, and that's when they were like, okay, yeah, I confirmed that all of the symptoms you're having and you've grown to be more and more aware of the older you've gotten and the more busy life has gotten is not anything that's just psychological. There has to be something more. And so they referred me to a neuropsychologist at the same clinic. And the whole diagnosis process was very long. It was 3 sessions of 4.5 hours each. And they basically just squeeze your brain. That's literally how I felt, like a wet rag just being squeezed. They do everything. They do like IQ tests, attention span tests, math skills, vocabulary, everything, literally everything. I would go home after each session and just sleep till the next day because of just how mentally exhausting it was. And the most important thing that they look at, well, the first thing they look at when they're trying to get you diagnosed is, were the symptoms there as a child? And by that, I mean before the age of 12. That's like one of the big main criteria in the DSM-5. So were these things there during your childhood? And so they there are like 3 questionnaires, one for you, one for your parents, and then one for like a close one. It could be teachers when it comes to children. It could be just best friends, partners, whatsoever. And basically what that does is like a checklist. Did this happen when you were a kid? Did that happen? So and so. And while we were filling this, because I was filling mine and mom was filling the parent one, everything made sense. It started just clicking in my head, and in her head, just like, well, yeah, you did this, but I never thought it could be ADHD related. And the more sessions I did, I got to the end one, and the neuropsychologist was like, it is very obvious that you have raging ADHD. And the only reason why you never got diagnosed as a kid is nobody was taught what symptoms and signs to look for. And I think now I'm starting to get to your question. I don't know why I do a lot of side notes inside. Anyway.
Girl, that's how your brain process. Don't apologize for it.
But what I want everybody to keep in mind, and to answer your question as a healthcare professional, symptoms in men do not show up the same way in women. Period. And that is why ADHD is severely undiagnosed in women, and that's why most of us only get diagnosed later on in life. That's because, again, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the hyperactivity component, while it is also very common in women, it does not show up the same way. And there's a prevalence. So a type is it's more frequent in men than in women. Men tend to be more hyperactive, as in, they're very, very active. They want to do stuff all the time. Sometimes they're even crowned as class clowns because of that. And that is why, because that behavior is disruptive, that is why men tend to be diagnosed way earlier in life than women. So because, it is more common in men in the first place than in women, and because in men it tends to be more on the hyper disruptive side, people, so early child educators and even healthcare professionals, are taught to look for the symptoms that are most common in men. And that is why women who have ADHD, and we tend to have more inattentive, we're more inattentive rather than hyperactive. We can be hyper. I have the combo type, so I have both. But I'm more inattentive than hyper most days. So because we tend to be more of the I zone out, daydreaming, I lose focus, things of the sort, we're calmer on the outside, quote unquote calmer. That's why we fly under the radar for so many years. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you need to look for the hyperactivity, but you also need to look for the mental hyperactivity. So not just them, being mounted on springs, or not being able to sit still, or always needing to do things and no impulse control and things of the sort, but also, do you overthink a lot? Do you tend to spiral? Because what happens is you get one little negative thought, and then it just spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals, and then next thing you know, you're having a whole sad episode.
Guilty.
Me too. It is very severe, and I hate it, but it is what it is. But yeah, you need to look for not just the physical hyperactivity, but also the mental hyperactivity. Obviously, alongside the whole learning difficulties when it comes to school, if you're talking younger people or children, are they being too disruptive? And if so, why? Because it could be a response to trauma. They could be rebelling against something, or it could just be ADHD. It's not just because they're trying to be a pain in the ass for their teacher. There is a reason behind it, so there could be that. But also, if they daydream a lot, if they zone out, if they're not able to plan things properly, they can't stay on top of their assignments, thing of the sort. So it's really not one thing that you should look out for, but rather a bunch of stuff that all come together and give you ADHD.
Yeah, that conglomeration makes it difficult, because a lot of those symptoms also fall into a lot of other categories for other things. And I think this is the perfect time to say this as well, because Wilting said that my brother suggests I should get diagnosed with ADHD since he suspects that I have it, but I don't know if I can handle it if it comes back positive. So one of my biggest theories as to why people get diagnosed late with ADHD is because I think a lot of the time people know when something is off in their bodies. People know, a lot of the time you are the very first person to know when something is off in your body, whether it's in your mind or, your heart, your stomach, your bones, whatever. If something is off in your body and it's a mental related thing, because of the stigma, sometimes people can be very nervous and very scared to go search for the diagnosis because the diagnosis itself is terrifying because it's something different. It's something different. So while not entirely the same thing, when I was 16 and I lost the hearing in my right ear, when it first happened, mind you, it was a month after I'd gotten sick, so we didn't notice it for a long time. When I did first start noticing it, of course you first think, you start thinking like, that's kind of weird, that's different, that's not what it used to be like before, that's not how I used to live my life for the last 16 years. And then when we did finally, go through the whole hop, skip, and jump, go to the different audiologists and whatnot and get the full diagnoses and the full paperwork in front of me, and like the doctor was like, yeah, this is like profound hearing loss. I remember getting in the car with my mom and my brother and just kind of sitting in the backseat by myself and just having a really good cry, because just the diagnosis itself of being told that something that now from that moment forward, everything I knew in the past 16 years of how to live my life is now different. It has to be, because now I have this, well, it wasn't an illness, but I have this something different in my life that now moving forward is going to be with me for the rest of my life. And that was terrifying in and of itself, because immediately after that, you think, okay, well, now that I have this diagnosis, how do I live with it? What do I do with it? Where do I go from here? And so a lot of the times people are so terrified when it comes to mental illnesses of putting a label on it, because as soon as you put a label on it and you acknowledge it, you then have to figure out, what do you do after that, right? It becomes so real. It becomes so real for you that now you're like, a lot of people are so afraid to the fact where they're like, well, you know what? Ignorance is bliss. If I don't know, I don't have to deal with it. If I don't have the proper answers, I don't have to move forward. I can just leave that where it's at, and I don't have to worry about it a damn day in my life. But that doesn't fix anything either. Obviously, running away from the problem doesn't fix the problem. You're just running away from the problem, and eventually it's going to catch up to you. So what I will say, especially to you, Wilting, is that it's not so much of what you think you can handle if the diagnosis comes back positive. It's more so of, what do you think is going to be easier for you moving forward? Is it easier in your life to live with the hindering symptoms of ADHD on a daily basis? And again, I don't know the severity of your symptoms. I don't know how it affects you on a day-to-day basis, but I have to assume it affects you in some way, shape, or form. Is it easier for you to live with that hindrance? Or is it easier for you to live with the diagnosis of actually knowing and understanding what it is, and then moving forward to take steps to make it easier for you? I think a lot of the fear comes from the unknown, is not knowing what you do next, because there is no one-size-fits-all treatment. Everybody has different treatments for ADHD. So not knowing what your treatment is going to be and not knowing what your treatment is going to be like can be terrifying. I am somebody who doesn't really enjoy the unknown. I don't really like moving forward and not knowing how things are going to turn out. That makes me so freaking anxious. And a lot of people are like that. So when it comes to dealing with like diagnoses for ADHD, yeah, a lot of the late diagnoses can come from just like a general lack of knowledge of like going to your doctors and your doctors just being like, well, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's this instead, or maybe it's this, maybe it's that, or maybe you watch too much TV, maybe turn the TV off in the background, or maybe stop playing on your phone, or stop playing video games, or blah, blah, blah. Everything except acknowledging what the fuck it actually is. And then a lot of it can also be knowing and understanding that something is off in your body, but being too afraid to move forward to get it diagnosed. Because once it's diagnosed, it's real and you can't turn back. Once you get that real answer, you can't go back from it. So I definitely encourage everybody to be knowledgeable, obviously. Like, be knowledgeable and advocate for yourself very heavily. If a doctor is trying to tell you it's one thing and you know for sure it's not, then I would encourage you to either find another doctor or to keep pushing that doctor to keep saying, hey, this is not absolutely correct. What you're saying is absolutely not correct. I need you to listen to me And I need you to understand that what you're telling me is not the reality for me. So I need you to come up with a different solution with me. I need you to collaborate with me and try something different. I don't care where you need to pull it from, but I need you to pull it from somewhere. And if the doctor's unable to, you find somebody who will. But then also, don't be afraid to dig your heels in and accept your realities. I know that's a lot easier said than done. But understanding that once you know what the problem is, the only thing left are solutions. So the only thing left that you have to sift through is how to fix it. And on the other end of fixing it is happiness, understanding, coping, a better life, I don't want to say a better life. What I will say is a better day-to-day method of living that is better than what you had before. Because before you could be like, my life is fine. I have a great life. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's fine if that is your perceived reality. If you do believe that your life is great and nothing's wrong with it, blah, 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 whatever. However, I am always but it could be better. Just because it's functioning right now does not mean that it could not be functioning better later on. Functioning's great. We love that. Is surviving still living? Sure. You're still living when you survive, but the difference between surviving and thriving, two completely different things. Surviving, sure. I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. My brain's still working. My body's still kicking. Sure. Thriving, though, is, what's that? I'm blanking on his name now. Maslow's hierarchies of need. Okay. You know, that cute little triangle. I love that thing. They drilled that into my brain. I used to print it out and freaking put it in all of my textbook and my binders. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're unfamiliar with that it's basically a psychological framework of how to achieve self-actualization and happiness in the human corporeal form. And so Maslow's hierarchy of needs is exactly what it sounds like. They offer it to you in like a triangle where at the very bottom, it's a big chunk of the very bottom of the triangle are your absolute basic human needs, things that you cannot function without, things like oxygen, food, water. Like you cannot function without these things. And then the higher the pyramid goes, the more abstract it gets, right? The more they add things like spiritual awareness, love, comfort, abstract concepts, not physical concepts, but still very, very important. And at the very tippy top of Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization. It's a teeny little part of the pyramid. The reason it's so small is because not a lot of people achieve it. Self-actualization is very hard to achieve. That does not make it impossible. But you should live a life that pushes you further and further towards self-actualization every single day. It should be the main goal. Everybody wants to be happy. Of course, happy looks different for other people. Happy looks different for everybody. Self-actualization is just that it's not necessarily happiness. It is a deep-seated comfort in your life where everything feels comfortable, easy, achievable, and happy. And you're not struggling, you're not stressed out 24/7, you're not jumping through hoops or cutting corners in order to achieve certain things. And so, yeah, you can function and you can survive, sure. But don't you want to live instead? Don't you want to thrive instead? I do. I think everybody should. Yeah, Kiso said it good. It all boils down to deciding if living the way you are outweighs the fear of change at the end of the day. Agreed.
Absolutely.
Very, very big agree.
I remember the big existential crisis I had right after my diagnosis. It took me like 6 to 8 months to just come to terms with the whole, I got a late diagnosis and this has always been my life. But now that I've been actually made aware of it and now that it's on paper and now that I, sent this to my university and, I'm pushing for accommodations for my classes, this feels real. And that is scary. So there's a big shock factor at first, but the more you make yourself sit with it, the more comfortable you become with it. But it takes a lot of time. And like you were saying, you see a lot of people just would rather not go down the whole, maybe there's something, maybe I should try to seek a diagnosis because of the whole, fear they have that this is going to change my life. But this has always been there, and maybe, in the back of your head, you've always felt like something was off and you're like, this is not right. Something's happening. I just don't know what. I can't quite put a finger on it. So it's basically just confirming what you sort of already know. And because that makes it feel very real, it is scary. So I do fully understand that. And unfortunately, because of the stigma around mental health and mental illness, but especially in our case today, ADHD, a lot of people will start treating you differently because of it, and it has nothing to do with you. I'm being straight up. It has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them, because you've always been like this. This has always been a part of you. So the fact that they just now decided to behave differently is just, again, it has nothing to do with you. This is nothing to be ashamed of. And, it's different. It's not like everybody. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, Ficos just said, that happened to me. I did feel like I could have lived a different life moment, but I've tackled it since, along with the ADHD, and things are much better mentally. That is essentially what it ends up boiling down to, is like, you can live a life, or you can live a better life, or a different life. Not saying that your life that you have now is not good. Only you can decide that. However, what I will say is that if you, at any point in time, do feel like some aspect of your life is a struggle or is a detriment in any way, shape, or form, that means that it can be improved. And so if it can be improved, it should be. And if that's going to a psychiatrist, going to a therapist, talking to your doctor, getting medicated, getting an official diagnosis, then that is something you have to tackle. And unfortunately, nobody can do it for you. So you are going to have to get to a point where you are ready to just kind of grapple your fear of the change of things and take a stance and say, you know what, I'm really tired of living with this. I'm really tired of just kind of dealing with it and pushing it to the side and just hoping it gets better on its own. I think I'm actually ready to do something about it. And that's like, with a lot of mental illnesses, just that battle alone can be so exhausting, of just being like, like I am done fighting myself. I am ready to go do something about it and let somebody else help me and give me the tools that I so desperately need to fight this, because what I've been using so far has not been working. And that can be really tough too, is admitting that everything that you've been doing has not been working. So you need to go try something else. So I appreciate you sharing that, Ficos, and I do appreciate everybody just kind of being very focused, coincidentally, or rather ironically, in an ADHD-centered chat. Everybody is incredibly focused on talking about, a lot of the topics, and a lot of, we've got a lot of good insight and a lot of good experiences shared in chat today as well. So I will ask this one final question, just because I see it's 12:20 already. One thing I will say about this whole discussion is that it is very clear, not that it was a question for me, but it's nice that everybody else gets to see it now. It is very clear how deeply educated you are on this, like, on just like the brain in general, but just like on this topic. And not only just like educated, but how passionate you are about it, like how much you can tell it means a lot to you. And that makes what you say not only like educational and like fun to listen to, but it also makes it very genuine and relatable. And so that's why so many people in chat are very able to, kind of listen very openly to what you're saying and just kind of really take a lot of what you're saying to heart. You can tell a lot of people here listen very deeply to what you are saying, me as one of them. So I'm just expressing, I'm having a deep moment of gratitude. I'm expressing deep gratitude for just your knowledge, but like your ability and willingness to talk freely and openly and share said knowledge, because it changes lives. It really does. Like, I know it's kind of, I don't know, it sounds a little silly to some people, but I take it very seriously. Like, somebody said in chat, you're not yapping. I mean, I know I call it yapping too, so I'm guilty as well, but the words that you put out there, you never know who it shapes. You never know who it affects. And you never know what you're going to say and how, or rather, you never know what you say, how it's going to be taken and applied to somebody else's life, which is why you, and I can tell, you speak with such intentionality where like you want people to understand, like, yes, this is incredibly important, but I also know that my words have power and my words have consequences. And so speaking in such an educated and like deeply genuine understanding way is impactful in ways that are not lost on me. But if nobody's ever told you that before, let me be the first to let you know that you are shaping lives. Like, lives are being changed because of what you are talking about and because of what you are saying and educating. And so I am just gonna put my hats off to you for that, because that's not easy to do, especially with somebody with social anxiety. It's not easy to do, but you tackled it beautifully, and you deserve flowers for that. So one thing I will say before I ask you that, or rather my last question, is there anything that you would like to say, final thoughts surrounding the concepts of mental health or surrounding ADHD, or just anything else that you would like to leave chat with before we end?
It's gonna be okay. That's the first thing I like to say. It's gonna be okay. It might be very blurry right now, very uncertain. You know, a lot of things might not make sense. You might beat yourself up, most days. Especially if you're already aware of your ADHD, or if you're already aware of any mental illness you might have. You might not even, be receiving support from the people around you. And I know how shitty that is, because not as much as we'd like for other people to understand, not everybody's going to. But I hope today's conversation made you feel seen and heard. And if nobody has said this to you today, or in a while, I see you, I hear you, your feelings are valid. And even though you might feel alone through this, and again, your feelings are valid, I am here with you. I am walking down this road with you, and we're gonna be okay. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, hell, it might not be in 3 to 4 years, but we're gonna figure it out, and it's gonna be fine. But sometimes you just need some time. Give yourself grace, because you deserve it. Doesn't matter what other people tell you, doesn't matter if other people are not patient with you. You deserve patience, and you deserve grace. And you're a little baddie, and you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Fine.
You are a little baddie. I love that.
You're a bitch.
We are all just little baddies walking this earth.
Absolutely.
Well, from the bottom of my little nerd heart, thank you sincerely for this. Thank you for being so open and honest. Thank you for educating. And thank you for just being an active participant in not just like the mental health community, but in the STEM community. We need more women in STEM. We really, really, really do. And we need, like you said, Canada needs more doctors. So they are going to be far more blessed than they were before the day you become a doctor. So deeply looking forward to that, hoping to continue to push you on your journey and support you. And I did put up there the guest thing if you want to follow Aya. If you haven't already, I think that's kind of crazy. We've been yapping for like 3.5 hours and you haven't followed my guest? Okay. But if you haven't followed Aya already, please, I strongly implore you, if this discussion hasn't changed your mind, maybe go watch, her gaming or whatnot to see if there's anything else you need, I guess, before follow. But please go follow Aya. You will not regret it. Yeah, single-handedly one of the best things I have found on Twitch so far.
No, you're gonna make me cry.
You have tissues, though. It's okay.
I do have tissues.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone so much for being here and for being active. I have an alert going. That's why I'm like, what the hell? That's okay. No, it's my follow alert. It's just the freaking link thing going like. But yeah, thank you so much. I am going to end stream together, but obviously feel free to continue streaming on your end. And I love your community so much. They were so attentive and so helpful and so chatty and we're doing such good things. We really are. I love this for us. Thank you so much again. I give you many.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for just being here with us today and listening and chatting. I know you have to get going a little bit because you have things to do. I'm gonna stay on my side and chat a bit more, and then I'm also gonna call it a day.
Yeah, girl.
But yeah, again, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day, night, wherever you are in the world. And I hope I will see y'all again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Talk to Mama Chaos again.
Yes, we will. I talked to her when I went on break, and she's on board. So we will
plan that. Yes, let's talk.
Will plan that.
All right, love. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, lovely. Again, thank you all so much for being so kind and so open and so welcoming and warm to Aya. Not that I had any worries you wouldn't be. But yeah, I am going to work on when we're going to get back to streaming Claire Obscure this week. I will put that in the Discord as soon as I get it figured out, which will probably be like later on tonight, once I take a look at my schedule of what's going on this week. So, as per usual, mwah, I love you all so much. Take my love and my light with you. Kiss your pets and your loved ones for me. And do not forget to stay sexy. That part is really, really important. I will see you all sometime this week. I promise I'll choose soon. Okay, love you. Bye.